summer yet may bloom again, though eyes be up upon us.
Welcome everyone. It is time again for another Warhammer stream. We are still going to be on Warhammer 2 for just a little bit longer, as 3 is on the near horizon. But today it is going to be RTK versus AIMA in a clan war showdown. And for those unfamiliar with how that song and dance goes, it is going to be a compilation of 1v1s and 2v2s and a final 3v3 in the end, to kind of wrap things up, where all of the 1v1s are going to be worth 1 point, 2v2s going to be worth 2, and the 3v3 is going to be worth a whopping 3 points. So we are going to be getting underway pretty soon. We're going to be hopping from lobby to lobby. Our first one is going to be RTK Honeynut on Chaos versus Tretch on Beastmen. This one is going to be on Oakenhammer. And we are going to be getting underway very shortly. We got both people in the lobby. Welcome everyone to the stream again. Welcome Happy, welcome Bob. It's going to be a good fun today. Not sure when that score change happened, but fairly certain it's still 1 for all the 1s, 2 for the 2s, and 3 for the 3. Looks like we have Tretch ready to go. Oh wait, okay, so I guess it is 2 points for the 1v1s, 3 for the 2v2s, and 4 for the 3v3. I guess I missed that bit of information there, but yeah, it's right on the rule set for this, so apologies for the misinformation to start the stream off, but it has been duly corrected. So let's see, when 3 comes out, will the Clan Wars mix in domination and siege battles? I'm not sure about siege battles, but I would definitely be seeing some domination battles for the Clan War format. I mean, it's kind of be still up in the air, kind of how the just general multiplayer scene is going to be for that anyways. I'm thinking very well could be seeing a mix between domination, maybe some more regular gameplay, but it's kind of be still in the early stages of that. We got to figure out how things are going to be faring on both sides and just how domination's going to work out. I mean, it's still, we've only seen a couple days worth of gameplay, but without further ado, they have loaded up into our first match, so let's switch into there. Nice quick turnaround on the first game. So we'll be going over AIMA on the Beastmen, so that's going to be Tretch. The scorecards are going to be just a little reversed on that side, but for the Beastmen, we do have Angor Spearman Herd, going to be 4 units of those, and we are going to be seeing a couple of Bestigors as well. These nice armor piercing, good piercing through the high armor of the Chaos Forces. We have Korok's Man Rippers as well, a little anti-large be throwing in on top of that, and then we're going to be seeing a bunch of Centaurs with a couple of Centaurs with throwing axes for some nice good mobility. For the Lords and Heroes, we do see a Brace Shaman of Wild coming in with Traderkin, and then a Gorbel and Torox the Brass Bull going to be coming in for the 2 melee characters, as Torox going to be coming in with Bloodgreed, Slaughter's Call, and Brass Body. Pretty standard kit for him, and the Gorbel just going to be having that Blood Greed, and that is all that he has on him. But that is pretty much it for the Beastmen. Fairly straightforward, nothing too special or out there for that army. Now for the Chaos Forces, led by Honeynut, we are going to be having some Chaos Marauders for the front line, going a little bit lighter on that front. They do have some Chaos Spawn backing them up for some nice mass and that unbreakable center line, but the big stopping power is going to be in the single entity squads. We have Archaon, the Everchosen, coming in with Fireball and Burning Head. 2 Exalted Heroes as well. One does have that Mark of Khorne coming in, so it does have that additional charge bonus, base weapon damage, melee attack, and immune to psychology. And then we do have 2 Feral Manticores up in the sky above them. For the Chaos mobility, they're going to be having a few Skirmish Calves, some Marauder Horse Masters, 3 units, or 2 Horse Masters, 1 unit of Horsemen on one flank, and then we'll be having some more Horse Masters and Horsemen on the other. But that is going to be all for that. Both sides getting underway. Beastmen going to be moving forward, but both sides have it's fairly comparable. We have plenty of mobility both sides, so it should be some good fun there. Centaurs are going to be looking to really probably push their advantage with their melee game. They do have a bit of decent speed. They have 93 speed on these Centaurs. Now they do have a slight buff up on there, and they are going to be a little quicker than the Horse Masters at their 90, but that isn't really a big change there. Yeah, definitely seeing that balance of power already heavily favoring Beastmen, as has been the case since the Beastmen have really kind of come out. They've always had that edge coming into battles. As the Angor Spearman Herd are going to be kind of pushing forward, taking all of the shots from the Horsemen, Horse Masters. Not really too much of a loss there. They just want to be keeping those shots away from their more expensive units. All of these Bestigors don't really have any shields. They only have to rely on their armor, and it is 95, which is going to be a fairly considerable amount, but even Horse Masters will be able to chunk away at that for the best part. But Chaos being a lot more cautious here than the Beastmen. Beastmen coming right on down the pipe, as Chaos is going to be trying to take advantage of their range superiority as they just kind of slowly move their way back, just kind of getting as shots in that they can. Definitely think the shots need to start kind of going in towards more of the expensive units, these Korrax Man Rippers and those Bestigors. Start whittling them down bit by bit. We do have a couple of them starting to cycle around into the back line, trying to put some pressure on more of the Centaurs, getting some good damage value on that side, as the Beastmen themselves starting to push their right flank a bit, trying to get in, just kind of getting some of their own shots into the front of these Chaos Marauders. But all of this is just kind of be waiting for all of the Bestigors to really kind of get in, because they're going to be able to chew through these Chaos Marauders with no problem whatsoever. Even the Man Rippers, being more of an anti-large, shouldn't have any problem dealing with the Chaos Infantry. It is going to be the Death Squad of the Exalted Hero, Manticore, and Archaon, which is going to be the problem on that front. And here is that nice charge coming in from the Centaurs. No real response here by Chaos, as these Bestigors going to be able to quickly break these Marauders. The rest of the single entities kind of cycling around. Need to start committing to that melee fight, as the Beastmen right now have been able to kind of dictate the forms for that melee engagement. Lots of Centaurs all up on that center ranks. Though these Centaurs with throwing axes probably don't want to be here too much longer. Those Chaos Spawn doing quite a bit of damage to them. But we are going to be seeing, it looks like, a Traderkin, but we do have those Korrax Man Rippers as well, and they're doing a ton of damage to those Chaos Spawn, as they're just breaking them down. And that Traderkin as well is just going to see those Chaos Spawn out the door very quickly. But this just blob of Chaos units and a beautiful Burning Head is going to be just ripping through all of those Centaurs, who had just blobbed very nicely on all of the single entities for Chaos. But now it is just a massive fight with the 2 Doom Bulls trying to duke it out. We do have some Centaurs though coming in the rear. We have one of the Feral Manticores has rampaged in this engagement. We are getting some of the Chaos Infantry coming to support, but the infantry support is definitely going to be favoring the Beastmen, as it is just Bestigors surrounding this squad, and Chaos is just in the middle of everything there, as we kind of spin out just a little bit to kind of see how the rest of the battle is, even though this is going to be where most of this engagement is going to be decided. One of the Manticores has ended up routing off, and not a whole lot of damage has been dealt to Torox, as he's able to kind of pull on back out and just allow just the mass and all of his Bestigors to do the damage that needs to be done here. as the Exalted Hero and all of them are just kind of really tanking that pretty well. They have been able to pull that balance power back as we're getting another Traderkin, this time going to be hitting these horsemen, all of these single entities again. So getting some nice damage value there as more and more of the forces really need to kind of start collapsing in for Chaos. They have plenty of units on the fringes and they need to start bringing them in, especially those Chaos Marauders. They need that infantry support as another Burning Head this time is going to be ripping through these Bestigors. Bestigors with their armor going to be able to tank that fairly decently. Second of the Feral Manticores has ended up routing off, and Archaon now is going to be getting sandwiched between both of the Gorbel and Torox, doing a lot of damage there. Both of these Exalted Heroes definitely need to come to their Lord's aid if they're going to be able to salvage this, because both of these Gorbels are going to be having a field day dealing with Archaon as he's getting fairly low in terms of HP, as that Gorbel is going to be landing some hits. Archaon getting very, very low as he tries to pull out, but the Centaurs are able to just provide enough mass to kind of keep him in place, and I think that is going to be the end of Archaon. He is going to be able to finally kind of push out, but he is very, very low in terms of HP, so his melee fight at this point isn't going to be going so great for him. He's going to have to be on the run, though even at this point the Brave Shaman might even want to be using a Traderkin just to bring Archaon down, but they're doing a good job of chasing him off to the edge of the map. I mean, they don't have too far to go, and I don't see any aid coming their way anytime soon. Feral Manticore is able to kind of rout off some of the Centaurs on the edge, but there is still quite a bit of mobility for Chaos left. Even though balance power has shifted back into the Beastmen's favor, there is still plenty of Horsemen and Horsemasters kind of on the fringes, so Chaos just has to be a little bit more cautious from this point on, having lost a lot of their heavy hitters. Unfortunately, the Feral Manticore going to be getting probably a little too close to that Gorbel, is going to be end up routing himself, as the Brave Shaman and Torox can be going underneath him, kind of being able to push him out of the fight there, and that is one less terror-causing monster to worry about in the late game. And I think that Chaos just really needs to regroup all of their forces. They don't have to deal with as much left of the Beastmen. They've been able to deal with the mobility on that side fairly well, as all of the Centaurs have been pushed off the field. Both of these Exalted Heroes thinking about probably potentially going into this fight, but they just need to be able to kind of use up the rest of their ammunition. They have plenty of it left, especially on this unit of Horsemen. Just whittle down the infantry support, and that's going to allow Chaos to get a nice advantage in terms of that single entity fight that is left, because still that Torox and Gorbel is going to be a fairly fearsome foe to deal with. Don't want to be getting caught out without any support of their own, as Torox and the Gorbel just continue to kind of push against these Exalted Heroes. Exalted Heroes should have no problem at all keeping their distance. Some of these Chaos Marauders, though, gonna be getting a little or trying actually by the looks of it to catch these Bestigors as they're in hot pursuit of them. Just need to be a little cautious, as a lot of the Chaos forces are on the other side of the map, and it looks like the Exalted Heroes are trying to make a run for it, trying to thread that needle. I think there's probably a safer route to go. Well, one of the Exalted Heroes is kind of hitting Torox in the rear, but the diving barrel roll of the Gorbel can be swinging and missing at that Exalted Hero, but they might be able to push off this one Exalted Hero as they land another hit, as it kind of gets bogged down by the Koroks Man Rippers, and is going to end up routing. But the rest of the Chaos forces are indeed here. Shots can be starting to rain in, and we do have a very healthy unit of Chaos Marauders hoping to try and peel off these units, but I think they have lost one more of their single entity as another massive hit does land on that Exalted Hero. But a nice charge here into the rear as they're going to be trying to break those Bestigors, but a nice response as they drop a Traderkin right onto the group of these two units, doing some nice bit of damage there, but they should be able to break at least one of these units. The other Bestigor as well looks like it is about to be on death's door, and that is going to be really how Chaos can bring this back, just eliminating the infantry, as they just have Koroks Man Rippers now really left to deal with. Another charge should be able to break both of these Bestigors. The one has regained a bit of its leadership with the counter charge into the approaching Horse Masters, who have used up all their ammunition, but they still have a bit of tricks to pull with their own in melee. And Chaos is just going to be continuing to whittle down the units bit by bit, as the Gorbel and the Braceshaman just going to be trying to countercharge wherever possible, able to kind of push back. These Horse Masters are going to break their own leadership, as they have been running around the map quite a lot, even though a lot of these units still fresh as a daisy and ready to go, as the Exalted Hero does try and get a charge into the Gorbel, but a nice counter charge by itself, and Torox and now the Braceshaman going to be collapsing in upon him. And I think that Exalted Hero kind of went in just a little too early, needed to kind of come in with some kind of support to kind of distract the single entities of the Chaos side, or of the Beastman side, as now the Exalted Hero is kind of on the run. Definitely needs to collapse in at the same time here. They're kind of going in piecemeal, and I think that is going to be playing to the Beastmen's advantage there, as they're going to be able to kind of pick off the heavy hitters for Chaos one unit at a time, as the Chaos Manticore trying to pull up. We do have the Horsemen, so now are going to be able to start bogging down the single entities for the Beastmen, and this is going to be where you need to start cycle charging in with those Exalted Heroes, as the Beastmen are going to be able to, they're going to be very fearsome foes, so any engagements are going to have to be fairly short-lived for the single entities on Chaos, and all the Beastmen have to do is just kind of attack whatever comes their way, as Torox lands a nice beautiful hit on that Manticore, and I think that might just be enough, and it does just outright drop that Manticore. Exalted Hero charges in, as the rest of the Chaos forces are just kind of slowly dwindling down themselves, as they try and kind of pin out the Braceshaman, keep it away from the rest of the single entities, but the Exalted Hero continuing just to take too much damage here in these engagements, and now Chaos is going to be divided. I know Chaos has been rather mindful of the Traderkin, don't want to be getting too blobbed up on him, and if there's enough Winds of Magic right now, this is exactly the time for that final Traderkin, which would just pretty much break everything that is left for Chaos. It looks like that Braceshaman is just about on the edge of routing itself, as they just try and drag everything down, so at least the magic for the Beastmen is off the table at this point. Balance power shifting a little bit more back towards center, as Torox and the Gorbel are kind of slowly getting dragged down. Torox taking damage after damage, as he's down to just under 1,000. Exalted Hero tries to dive in, but there's just too many horsemen, and both of these Gorbels are just focused solely on that Exalted Hero, as they were just had their eyes set on him as they try and pull forward to get that attack off. The Exalted Hero needs to kind of pull out of that engagement, but that distraction just allowed all these Horsemen, Horse Masters to deal enough damage, and that balance of power is now edging back into Chaos's favor. Exalted Hero looking to finish off the Torox, the Brass Bull, gets a charge in. Other Gorbel does respond with its own charge, trying to bring down the last of the heroes, but the hero is going to be able to pull out once again, and the rest of these horsemen just continuing to bog down these two Gorbels, trying to bring them down once and for all. Torox is now on the brink, as he does rout himself, and with him gone, it is now down to just one Gorbel, and I think Chaos at this point is going to be able to pull things back. Things were looking fairly dicey for them, but yeah, Gorbel, Torox unable to get the hits off in the late game. They did very, very well earlier on, but I think now it is pretty much a lost cause. There's just way too much infantry left, and RTK is looking to be getting onto the board first, as things definitely were not favoring them so much early on in that fight, but now in the end they were able to pull on through. So let's take a look at the after battle report. Archaon still managed to rack up 2,100 in total damage. Did some nice work with a couple burning heads, really able to roast through those Centaurs very, very well. Both of the Exalted Heroes, after Archaon was gone, really had to play a lot more cautiously, and were able to do that for the most part, but really it was the skirmish cav here that really saved the day for Chaos, as we're going to be seeing the value for all of these Horse Masters doing very, very well. Both of the Chaos Feral Manticores are doing some pretty decent work on top of that. As for the Beastmen side of things, Torox and the Gorbel both able to get quite a bit of damage, and as well as the Braceshaman getting about 1,900 across the board for all three. And then the rest of the units, I mean, not going to be expecting a whole lot from the Angors, and the Bestigors probably not doing as well as they would like. Korok's Manrippers did very well against the Chaos Spawn, but the mobility, they just probably were a little too aggressive with those. They were outnumbered pretty heavily from Chaos, and not having them in that late game really did hurt them for that final showdown. But that is it for game 1. And now we're going to be getting into game 2, so we'll update the score as well. So RTK going to be prevailing for the first one, which means they are now up to 2 points on the first game. And our next one is going to be Wood Elves versus Lizardmen. And that one is going to be Sharks on the Wood Elves and Pajadron, probably butchered that pretty badly, on the Lizardmen. So we'll find that lobby and we'll hop into there. Once we figure out what they did for a password. All right, now we have to find all right. Well, we'll get into that lobby in just a second. Just need to crack the code for what their password is, but we can take a look at chat on the effects of that last game. But yeah, it was just good, fun first scrap. Definitely was very looking favored for the Beastmen, but I think the Beastmen, the Gorbel, and Torox were probably a little too focused on trying to deal with the Exalted Hero when it did kind of get close to that melee fight, and they tried to just kind of push through all of the Horsemen and Horse Masters, but their mass just kind of, by doing that, they just weren't attacking the rest of the Horsemen, and just kind of taken all of that damage while they were just too focused on trying to deal with the last hero. And that just allowed them to just get dragged down through the mud. So hopefully, okay, got the password now, and we can hop on in. So the next one is going to be on Prague, which is a fairly decently sized map, which will allow both sides have plenty of mobility here. I know in the past it's been kind of a fairly straightforward matchup. Both kind of changes to costs over the last couple DLCs. It's been a little bit more of an interesting one at that. So now we're just waiting on our last contestant. Let's send them a message to get them on into the lobby. And then we can hopefully get underway for that. And for those who are in chat on both sides, we are going to be hopping from lobby to lobby, so that I'm trying to keep things rolling, so get things set up beforehand, army selected, so we can kind of go from game to game as quickly as possible. We have quite a few games still left to go, but we do have both now up and ready, and we should be getting through army select, and we can get underway as quickly as we can for game 2, where we have plenty of more action to come. I guess while we wait, we can kind of go over as well what the two, lineups are going to be looking like. So I'll pull up my handy dandy cheat sheet. So we had Honeynut on Chaos against Tretch on the Beastmen for our game 1. This is Charix against Bajadron on the Lizardmen. For our first 2v2, it is going to be Houseplant on the Lizardmen and Big JP on the Empire side for RTK. On AIMA side for the first 2v2, we have Roscoe on the Wood Elves and Tian on the Vampire Coast. For the next two 1v1s, we have Curio on the Norska with Noah Face commanding the Greenskins. Bobman will have the Beastmen in the fourth 1v1 against AIMA's Lord Baltimore on the Dark Elves. And then for the rest of the matchups for next 2v2 is Coast Tomb Kings against Dwarves Brittonians. That is going to be Vicious Satsuma on the Vampire Coast with Happy Puppy on the Tomb Kings. We'll have Lord Baltimore commanding the Dawi with Blood Penguin on Brittonians for the other side of that engagement. The Dark Elves then is going to be commanded by Call HR against Blood Penguin's Empire. And the last 1v1 is Greenskins Norska, flipped around from earlier on in that fight, as we have Big JP on the Greenskins and Butcherbird will be commanding Norska on the other side. The last 2v2 will be Bobman and Rusty on the Dwarves and High Elves, and Butcherbird and Majadron on the Counts and Tomb Kings. And the finale 3v3 will be seeing Bob Tresh, Vicious Satsuma, and Houseplant on Counts, Skaven, and Brittonians against Noahface, Blood Penguin, Skaven, or Noahface, Blood Penguin, and Lord Baltimore on Chaos, Skaven, and the High Elves. So that is going to be our lineup. It looks like we have already got both sides lined up as I was looking at some other scenes. So we'll switch that scene over for our next fight here. So for the RTK side on the Wood Elves, we are going to be seeing a nice wide formation with Dryads on the center ranks, a couple of Eternal Guard on the sides, and kind of switch, get that camera a little bit more smoother. But then we have some Wild Riders. We have Glade Guard in the center ranks with some Starfire shafts with that armor piercing and fire damage. And then we have some Hagbane tips as well for some poison, and then Wild Riders and some Great Stag Knights on the far flank. Now for the Lord, it is going to be Dryka in the center ranks, coming in with Pendulum and the Rouse to Wrath. As for the Lizardmen, it is going to be Skink Cohort, Source Warriors for that front rank. Plenty of infantry just across the board, as we do have some Skink Cohort with Javelins as well. Mobility is going to be Cold One Spear Riders for them, as you have some more just Skinks Cohorts with Javelins kind of spread across. And then we're going to be having a Slann Mage Priest of Fire going to be rolling in with Fireball. Looks like we have the Flaming Sword and Burning Head, as well as the Blood Statue of Spite, Aura Quetzal, and the Shield the Old Ones with the Bound Banishment. So definitely having plenty of magic damage to deal with the physical resist, particularly that Flaming Sword of Ruin. Always have to be mindful of the ROR Great Stag Knights, though all of the Dryads will be a good target to be using that on your own units to get that stop, to get things going. So for the engagement here, the Lizardmen definitely have the advantage, I think, in terms of the quality of that front line. Source Warriors should have no problem dealing with those Dryads, especially with the magic supports from that Slann Mage Priest, but the ranged is going to be coming in hot and heavy with those Glade Guard. Plenty of those going to be peppering away, and of course the Wild Riders and Great Stag Knights going to be hitting quite hard as we get an engagement off onto the flank, as everything is going to be piling on in. Wild Riders getting their charge in, Great Stag Knights, all of these units collapsing in, doing a lot of damage to these Cold One Spear Riders, especially with the Archer support on this flank. Though even though the Great Stag Knights have taken quite a bit of damage so far, that is a ton of damage dealt out that way, and a nice Pendulum going to be ripping through those Skink Cohort, probably looking to break them fairly quickly. But the mobility is looking very strong for the Wood Elves here, as the Great Stag Knights getting some very nice charges in. But that is going to open up the door for a counter charge by these Cold One Spear Riders, as they did charge right on in and got a nice bit of damage in on their side, as the Skink Cohort with Javelins are all going to be starting to pepper in their own damage. Wild Riders going to be coming in to try and support those Great Stag Knights, and we have looks like a Burning Head going to be ripping through. Probably a little misclicked there, probably wanted to be going right on down the pipe, but it's going to be doing a little bit of damage to those Dryads, as the Wild Riders and Great Stag Knights trying to kind of put some pressure on to that Slann, but these Cold One Spear Riders are going to be closing that side door as the shots though are going to continue raining in from these Glade Guard, as they're the ones that are just now going to be free to fire here in this engagement. The balance of power already shifting into the Wood Elves' favor, as the mobility for the Lizardmen are taking quite a bit of damage so far in this fight, dealing some nice losses to the Lizardmen, as the Wood Elves have been able to really minimize the damage they've taken. And if they can just eliminate the mobility in general, just having something left is going to be very helpful for these guys. We're going to be getting a banishment right on top of these Wild Riders who have collapsed in on that Slann, doing a nice bit of damage there as they do kind of push on out, as we have some Saurus kind of breaking through that line, putting some pressure. Actually, it looks like they're chasing down these Dryads. Probably would like to put some pressure onto these Glade Guard, but these Wild Riders are going to be getting a nice rear charge right into these chasing Saurus warriors, as they do turn just as the engagement gets underway, but they should be able to break those Saurus warriors fairly quickly, though the Wild Riders are pretty much on death's door themselves. Looks like the Great Stag Knights have been pushed back from the Slann, as the Slann is now kind of surrounded by these Eternal Guard, as they kind of slowly poke away at the Cold One Spear Riders and the Slann itself. Just kind of spin out. All of the Glade Guard though are just doing very well, just keeping their distance, and just have been free to fire this entire fight. Nothing has been able to put any pressure on those units at all, so they've just been racking up very good value, just kind of focusing down one unit at a time, as they just kind of keep a nice little arc around the Lizardmen, and Lizardmen really can't do anything about that at this point. There's still plenty of ammunition left, as a nice burning head though rips right into Dryka at point blank range, as Dryka has taken a decent amount of damage so far, but still there's just so many Wood Elf units left at this point, and particularly like Wild Riders and those Great Stag Knights, even though they don't really have a whole lot. I don't think they have any healing. Dryka didn't take any healing spells of her own. So and that's kind of a little bit of an interesting there, because they can benefit quite a bit from that healing. But now all the Glade Riders are just going to be focusing it down that Slann. Dryka as well, doing some nice damage there, and I think that is going to be just about all she wrote for the Lizardmen. There is army losses. Wood Elves are going to be taking the next game, so RTK going to be going up with another victory, taking 2 more points from that 1v1 win. So we'll go over the after battle report here real quick. So for the Slann, got some decent damage in, but I mean still not quite enough to really make it worth its while. Rest of the units, all of the Saurus warriors, some did all right, but a lot of them did kind of get shot to pieces quite a bit. Skin cohort as well, and I think the Cold One Spear Riders probably were the kind of biggest loss here, because they just got completely broken down by the combination of the Wild Riders and the Glade Guard. It was a good combination of all of those units. So like when all of the Wild Riders and the Great Stag Knights were paired nicely, get some nice counter charges in, didn't necessarily get a whole lot of damage value overall, but really all of these Glade Guard, when they kind of got their shots in, I mean one got almost 1500, so tons of value on that side. And then Dryka herself got 1400, so pretty good work there. We'll switch back to that main screen, and we will be looking to get into the next lobby after we update the scorecard, as RTK takes the next game, and score gives them another 2 points, putting them up 4-0, even though in the past it's just been single points, kind of just upping the point values here for each of these fights. So next one is going to be our first 2v2. See if we can find that lobby. I'll have to ask them to open up a spectator slot for that. That one is going to be Lizardmen Empire versus Wood Elves and the Vampire Coast. Oops, looks like the... All right. We are now in and ready to go for our next one. Looks like we have AIMA's already semi-readied up. Should be some good fun here. Azarks, welcome back after your game. Very well played there. So now we're going to be getting into our first team game. Lizardmen Empire, definitely going to be having some decent synergy there. We're going to have a very stalwart infantry of the Lizardmen, going to be kind of making up for the relatively light infantry that the Empire will normally be having. Of course, bringing in those big dinos and the like will be also very strong. But of course, the Wood Elves and the Coast going to be coming in hot and heavy with the ranged superiority, as the Wood Elves, Way Watchers, Glade Guard, Deepwood Scouts, and then of course all of the gun units of the Vampire Coast will be able to do some good work at firing into those rather more expensive units that the Lizardmen and Empire can be bringing. Still probably wouldn't be surprised to be seeing Volkmar here for the Empire, for the Lizardmen. I mean, there's so many options with that against Wood Elves. I mean, Trika probably wouldn't be too bad for getting some summons off, but might be wanting to roll in with something maybe more heavy hitter on that front. Actually, I think I got some units mixed up there. I was thinking Wood Elves and I was talking about Lizardmen there. But anyways, let's get things, they're loading on in, so let's switch over to our scene. But yeah, I got a little distracted thinking about those two units. I was looking at Wood Elves talking about Lizardmen. So as we load on in, just kind of update camera control just ever so slightly. Looks like a slight favor in the balance of power to the RTK side of things. Let's see what both sides have in store for us for our first 2v2. Yep, that's how the Norskans have survived with their submarines, Felix. That's how they escape the dangers of the world, is just kind of escape underwater. So for the RTK side of things with the Lizardmen and the Empire forces, we're going to be seeing a bunch of flagellants for infantry as well as some swordsmen. We have a Bright Wizard with Marcus Wolfheart coming in with the Hunter's Snare, going to be looking to kind of add a bit of control to that game. We're going to be having both heroes and lords on foot. For the range units, we're going to be seeing some huntsmen by the looks of things, getting that nice anti-large missile fire coming in from them. We do also have the silver bullets, as these guys all have stock, so just going to be kind of close that distance as much as possible against the longer range of the Wood Elves and the Vampire Coast. For the front line, it is going to be dominated by Saurus Spears, as the rest of the Empire is going to be kind of holding off in reserve. We do have some Red-Crested Skinks on the flanks, looking to get some decent armor piercing with them. We do also have the Chameleon Skinks and some Chameleon Stalkers, actually both Chameleon Stalkers, as they're going to be coming in with their explosive fire. Again, more units that have stock, so they're just going to be, again, trying to close that distance as best that they can. Backline, we have some Empire Knights for some sweeping. As for the Lizardmen units, we do have Oxyotl, so again, just heavy on the stock, so there's going to be very little seen on their side from AIMA's perspective, as we have a Skink Priest of Heavens coming in with Thunderbolt, as well as Windblast and Harmonic Convergence. Otherwise, pretty much the same on the other side. Some more Empire Knights, and again, more Chameleon Stalkers on that side. As for the AIMA side of things, they're going to be taken to a bit of the corner, as they're going to be in a bit more of a static formation with the Carronades, as they have 3 units of those. And then frontline going to be Eternal Guard, and then Zombie Pirates making up the most. Some of them going to have that pole arms, just some very tanky units to just delay for as long as they can, because they have some dryads to then fill in those pockets that do end up breaking. We have some bombers as well, a few units of those, looking to kind of clean up some of the infantry on that front. And then we, of course, we have some Deepwood Scouts as well for some very decent ranged support on top of that. And then the center ranks for the Lords and Heroes, we do have a Vampire Fleet Captain, Admiral of Vampires, so coming in with Invocation and with Drowned Dead. We have 2 Waystalkers with Arrows of Kurnus, and then a Gunnery Wight coming in with Scabscrath and more powder to be getting some more ammunition spread across all of the range units, some Sirens, and then we have the Lamprey's Revenge in that back line for some nice regenerating ranged support as well. But we are getting underway as RTK is going to be having to push up across the distance. It's a very large map to do so, and the Carronades going to be able to get some decent damage in the meantime, but they don't really have anything very good to shoot against. I mean, probably the best thing that they could probably shoot at is the Empire Knights, because everything else of considerable value is going to be stocked for the most part until they get to some pretty close range, and that is going to allow these guys to really kind of get into position and kind of get the flanking maneuvers without really being seen, because on the AIMA side there isn't really anything for mobility. They don't have, I mean the Deepwood Scouts might have the quickest mobility out of anything on this side, so they're going to be really kind of at the mercy of the mobility of the Lizardmen and the Empire side. So there's going to have to really kind of respond, and that is generally, you want at least something in terms of mobility, even if you do kind of keep it nice and safe. So a couple of Scurvy Dogs, I think, may have been a fairly decent addition to this army, just to kind of keep just allow the possibility of being able to chase things. Arrow Kurnus is going to be getting its first volley off, going to be going right into the Mage of Fire, but is going to be knocking the Mage down with that first shot, so it is going to be missing most of that damage, as the second one does come in, just kind of peppering it while he's down, but really able to tank most of that damage fairly well, avoiding the brunt of that barrage, as the looks like some shots going to be continuing to rain out from their side. But we're just going to have to kind of bear through a bit of the lag. It is going to be something you're going to have to expect when you're having this many units. I mean, let's take a look at that. So we have over 3,000 total units on the field today for both sides. And of course we have 5 people in the lobby as well. I'll just give each side more time to kind of choose what they want to do, as the cannons is just going to continuing opening up against the oncoming forces, and is going to be targeting the Empire Knights by the looks of things, doing some decent damage there. Otherwise might be focusing a bit on the 2 casters, who will be visible for them. We are getting some decent flanking maneuvers by the Chameleon Stalkers as they do get off onto the far flanks, and they are going to be looking to put some pressure in onto that back line, as the unsuspecting AIMA forces are going to be taking the brunt of that, with these 2 Deepwood Scouts on the flanks. Might be a nice first initial target for those, kind of really break them in, but most of these units do have a fairly spread out formation, especially all of the Wood Elf units, so they're going to be able to really avoid most of the heavy damage coming in. But I mean, even against like the Lamprey's Revenge would probably do a decent amount of damage, especially considering they have regen, and that fire damage would be a nice bit there. Nice shot coming in from Oxyotl onto that Gunnery Wight, doing some nice bit of damage there, as the cannons continue to sing, getting some okay damage, but for the most part hasn't been all too accurate so far. And now all of the Empire and the Lizardman forces are going to be starting to get into range. Silver bullets opening up, as the rather expensive Gunnery Wights can be sitting at point blank range for them. And we'll be seeing just who they're going to be trying to focus down first, but definitely presenting a nice target is that Gunnery Wight, as all of the rest of the Huntsmen going to be starting to focus down these bombers, while the rest of the infantry on the Empire and the Lizardmen just going to be kind of holding off in reserve. Actually, it looks like the Gunnery Wight is going to be getting a little too ahead of himself as it charges forward, but that's just going to be giving those silver bullets all the better of a target to shoot at, as the Burning Head's going to be ripping through these zombie hard gunnery mobs with the bombers, and is going to be continuing right on down, probably going to be hitting these deckhand mobs as well, as they do try and push forward, but they will be taking a bit of damage from that. And now all of the Saurus spears are going to be looking to push forward into that front line as the range units just continue to pepper away. The gunnery white has been taking so much damage. Invocation is going down, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep that gunnery white alive and well. And the trap has been sprung on the backside as the volleys are going to be fired into these dryads, though not doing a whole lot of damage. That very spread out formation is going to be helping the dryads sustain themselves just a bit more. But the shots just continuing. Gunnery White has been able to stabilize itself, still taking some shots coming in from those huntsmen, and the huntsmen themselves, though, have taken quite a bit of damage themselves. Those Deepwood Scouts doing an excellent job of peppering down those range units, and the Silver Bullets as well getting taken down a peg or two on top of that. But Oxyotl is still going to be peppering away his shots, moving forward just a little bit to try and get onto that Gunnery White, bring it down. But the Wood Elves and the Vampire Coast have been trading fairly decently after the Huntsmen. All of those units got into position, but now we do have those Flagellants starting to push forward. Going to be looking to really break through that front line as quickly as they can now that the bombers have been taken care of for the most part, and that is just going to allow them to just lawnmower their way through all of these zombies and try and get into the more expensive units on the back front. And a nice Thunderbolt going to be taking out one of the Carronades, as it does drop one of those units. Sirens in the back going to be trying to peel off these Chameleon Stalkers, who have been able to break through these Dryads, and is now opening the door for these Empire Knights to charge right on in to these Deepwood Scouts. And these cannons going to be getting some very nice damage here, but the Deepwood Scouts have been able to really eliminate a decent proportion of the range units of the Empire. Specifically, Huntsmen and the Silver Bullets are all being pushed back, and even the Bright Wizard as well probably got a little too close, and it is going to be getting pushed back. Empire Knights trying again to get into these Carronades as units are just trying to scramble to kind of close those gaps in. More of the swordsmen starting to push forward, but the flank over here for the infantry on AIMA has been able to kind of hold things back fairly well. But that backline has been decimated by those Chameleon Stalkers. Getting a summon down in, though, from Draika is these Malevolent Dryads, going to be pinning in these Empire Knights as they are kind of now stuck in. Their only way out is kind of back through that front line, but we do have Chameleon Stalkers and these Flagellants all kind of pushing forward. Carronade looks like is going to be held offline at this point, and I don't know if the spellcaster has just returned for the Empire, though is sitting very low, and if the Carronades are in range, it might be good to just get rid of that once and for all if they can. But the front line for the Saurus is starting to waver bit by bit as they're getting kind of dragged down, but the Flagellants are going to be picking up the steam as they really push forward, as with the Red Crested Skinks, this cohort of Sotek on that side, as they're just going to be relentlessly pursuing the range units of the Wood Elves and the Vampire Coast, and they're not going to be able to be pushed back all too easily, considering they are all unbreakable. So they're really putting that pressure in. Empire Knights are starting to get worn down and kind of repelled here in this flank, but there's plenty of other RTK units. But those Eternal Guard sitting nice and healthy, trying to at least save the Deepwood Scouts. The Carronades are pretty much a lost cause at this point, and the Lamprey's Revenge have taken quite a bit of damage as well, as they do get a nice little rear charge into the Saurus Spears, as the Huntsmen now a lot less pressure being focused their way, as all of these Flagellants really putting the Deepwood Scouts kind of into a run, as they're kind of pushing them back out of range of the Huntsmen, as the Huntsmen just kind of finishing up what is left on the front line. And the Deepwood Scouts in both of these units getting very, very low. And I think they're not going to be lasting all too much longer, and even if they do return, they have lost quite a bit of their stopping power. Though the RTK has lost, looks like the Bright Wizard has run once again, and now the Skink Priest of Heavens is also gone, so the spell casting for the Empire and the Lizardmen have been pushed back and are kind of broken, at least for the time being. And I do hear a net being dropped on some flank here. I can't remember, can't see where exactly that did end up going. We do get a Melkos Misfire Miasma on these cohort, trying to just slow them down, but they're just going to turn right back around and trying to deal with Drika there, as the Huntsman getting some nice shots into the very depleted unit of Deepwood Scouts. As we kind of swing back to kind of see just how things are going on a grander scale. A lot of the Empire units which were pushed back earlier on are starting to return, starting to get their shots in. Oxyatl continuing to just kind of pepper away their shots into the Vampire Fleet Captain, as both of these Waystalkers are kind of getting some shots in. So Oxyatl and Marcus Wolfheart both trying to bring down that Vampire Fleet Captain, which is hiding behind the dead Gunnery White, trying to tank that damage. Can't really kind of get out of that. Finally does kind of pull back, but at this point it was able to actually tank a fair amount of that damage, hiding behind that or that might have been a rotting Promethean sitting there, able to at least block some of the incoming fire. But that Vampire Fleet Captain is going to be going down. Balance power is now shifting heavier and heavier into RTK's favor, as the last of really all of the support is going to be getting drained away. And a nice wind blast here coming back in from the returning Skink Priest, going through those Sirens and Dryads, really kind of doing some nice bit there. A Thunderbolt as well, going to be dropped down right into the middle of all of that, bypassing that physical resist. All of those Sirens should be able to doing a nice bit of poke damage to there. And now both of the Range Lords are going to be finishing off these Waystalkers. Both of them are routing, and I think that is going to be army losses here before too long. Not a whole lot left to kind of hold back the tide. There's just way too many, especially unbreakable units left. Looks like at least one of the AIMA has conceded, and yeah, at this point, that is going to be all she wrote, as RTK takes the first 3 games. That is going to be putting them up pretty heavily in that scorecard, but there is still plenty of points left to go. So just chats from earlier, but game has kind of slowed down a little bit, but there we go. The last of the AIMA has finally withdrawn. Yeah, it was kind of a lost cause at that point for them. Just didn't have anything to really stem the tide of the flagellants as they kind of pushed through there. So we'll go over the after battle report here pretty quick, and then we'll swing on into our next lobby. But for the Vampire Coast side of things, both of the Lords and Heroes not doing all too great. Gunnery White definitely got pushed forward a little bit too far there, right into the waiting jaws of the Huntsman and the Silver Bullets, doing a lot of damage to them. And then the RTK was very patient in dealing with the bombers first before sending in all of like these red-crested skinks and the flagellants. The rest of the units, none of the Carronades really did all too great on that side. For the Wood Elves, we had Drika, and the Waystalkers did some nice, decent damage there. None of the Dryads doing anything too particularly well. And then some of the Deepwood Scouts did all right earlier on against the Huntsman, but when the Huntsman did kind of come back, they were able to kind of put some nice, decent damage there. I mean, one of these guys getting 772. Silver Bullets, despite being pushed back pretty early in the fight, were able to rack up 965. A lot of that into that Gurney White. Marcus Wolfart getting a decent amount, 1400 on him. And Flagellant's getting some decent damage as well for the Lizardmen. Oxyatl getting 2,000. Even Red-Crested Skinks doing very well as the Chameleon Stalkers. Otherwise doing some pretty decent damage there, but nothing too ridiculous for that. So let's switch back to our main screen as we get into our next lobby, which is going to be another 1v1 Norska versus Greenskins. We'll try and hunt that lobby down, and we'll update the scorecard in the meantime. And that is going to be another 4 points going to RTK. So that's, since it is, or no, it's 3 points for the 2v2. So they get another 3 points on top of that. So I'll put them up to 7 so far. Now for the next one, let's see if they have a lobby up already. Let's see. The next one is going to be Curio versus Noah Face. And I do not see the lobby just yet. I'll send a message to see if they have one open. Yes, no face. I don't see the lobby. I know we were having you guys create it so you guys could get time to create armies in the meanwhile. So it also might just be a issue with just time zones. I know Warhammer lobbies don't like it when you're across the map. You need to actually be able to see it. So, might need to add at least one of you on my friends list. Okay, so yeah, it looks like they have the lobby up. All right, well, while we wait to get friends added so we can see this next lobby, we kind of go in on the matchup, Norska versus Greenskins a little bit. It's pretty much been a Greenskin favored matchup. I mean, there's not many matchups that Norska is favored in, but it's definitely not too ridiculous on that front. It is going to be an uphill battle for Norska, but it is definitely a doable one at that. Much better than some of the other matchups that Norska could be going up against. Well, looks like I still don't see the lobby. So as Curio was hosting one, but I don't see it. We'll have to refresh the old list here. Either I'm not seeing it or I'm still blind. Well, this was supposed to speed things up. Looks like it's kind of slowing things down a little bit while I look for all of this. Here. I shouldn't have to have both in the friends list, but now hopefully, now that we've added both of them, we'll be able to see it. All right. Well, we're not seeing it, so we're going to just host this lobby. All right, So I got a lobby up now. I'll send invites to both of you, and we'll get this one underway. Don't know why it wasn't showing up the screen for either of us. Well, as we get that sorted, we have invites sent out to both Curio and Noah Face for our next one, so we'll just have to do it for this one. Hopefully the next lobbies won't have that issue. Hopefully that's not going to be a problem in Warhammer 3, but I'm not going to be holding my breath on that one. Let's see, the map for this one is supposed to be on Eschen. All right. Well, now we had Noah Face there for, I think, a brief second. Well, I wouldn't call these necessarily like hooks, but it looks like it. There we go. Now both people are finally in the lobby. Got that sorted out for now. We'll hosting a spectator for this one, and hopefully we'll be able to jump back to just hopping from lobby to lobby from this point on. Well, horns, tusks, claws, from whatever animal that we could find in the Norskan wastes. Yes, casual dresses is what we wear every day, out into the blistering cold. Definitely just bought it. I am not nearly talented enough to make this puppy, but yeah. All right. Oops. Looks like Noah Face might be having issues with this lobby too, hopefully, because he just ended up dropping out. Let's hope that's not going to be the case, as looks like this matchup is cursed from the get-go. Did I miss something? Well, it looks like Noah's game crashed, so hopefully we'll be able to get him back in here pretty soon. Yeah, I know that's definitely an issue when alt-tabbing, when joining something, it'll just stay on that loading screen. A workaround that I've found is I have Warhammer opened in windowed version, so I can just switch between at any point, and haven't had any issues since I switched it to that. Alright, so just waiting on Noah Face to reboot his game. And then I know Curio is ready to go, so we'll be able to get in as soon as Noah Face has his army selected. I mean, the map is Eschen, so it's a relatively smaller sized map. Probably favoring Norska on that. Anything too much bigger would allow probably the greenskins a bit more flexibility on their end. Oh, alright, I'll send another invite to Noah, and he should be in just a second. Sorry for the mid-stream delay. We tried to avoid it, but then Warhammer and Steam lobbies decided that that wasn't going to be the case this time around. Even with everyone friends with each other, we still couldn't see the lobby, and then once we created the lobby, crashed when joining the lobby. Knock on wood, since that doesn't bode so well for the game itself. Hopefully we don't have any issues with that. We don't have counts, so we're not going to be seeing a Nehek crash. Otherwise, I would almost expect it to happen at this point. Looks like he's ready to go, though. Had an army saved, so saving a bit of time on that. Curio is ready, so let's load on in, finally, into our Game 4 with Norska and Greenskins. Alright, loaded on in. We'll switch the scene over as well. Oops. And we'll go over what we've got. So for Curio on the Norska side for RTK, we are going to be having Horse Masters and Horsemen with some throwing axes mixed in for that front line. Throwing axes is kind of an interesting pick. I think I'm expecting some more heavy armor, potentially some stone trolls, or some black orcs on that front to help kind of whittle things down. Otherwise, it's just going to be marauders for that front line. We're going to be backed up by some marauders with great weapons. We're going to be seeing some marauder chariots as well, with some quick mobility with the Norskan Warhounds and the Norskan Icehounds, who do have that frostbite to help kind of slow things down a bit more. Double Feral Manticore up in the sky. And then for the Lord, it is going to be Wulfric the Wanderer, as he is kind of being jumped around on the battlefield. He is going to be coming in with Seafang and Hunter of Champions, and he's going to be on foot. No Skin Wolves, though, for the Norskan side of things. For the Greenskins, front line is going to be Savage Orcs, with the Goblins forming that center rank there, as we have some more Savage Orcs kind of in the secondary line. We have the, which I can only assume is the 8-Peak Loonies, the Night Goblins ROR. These guys have their Spinning Fanatics and are unbreakable. For the mobility on the Greenskin sides, we're going to be seeing some Orc Boar Boys on the flanks in the rear, and then we're going to be seeing the Skirmish Cav with the Morgul's Mangy Marauders, who have that armor piercing, and then the Forest Goblin Spider Riders for the other 4 units there, and 1 Goblin Wolf Rider Archer on top of that. For the Lord, it is a Goblin Great Shaman coming in with a few spells. Going to be coming with Vindictive Glare. We have Sneaky Stabbin', Itchy Nuisance, and then Arcane Conduit, Crown of Command, and Don't Even Try It. And then we also have a Goblin Big Boss as well with They Needs Stabbin', just trying to give that edge against the Lords. I guess the only Lord, there must be a caster there, must have missed that from earlier. So a Shaman Sorcerer of Fire with Fireball and Burning Head. Otherwise, the skirmish game is going to be getting underway. Norska definitely outnumbering the Greenskins on that front. And then Fireball as well is going to be arcing its way on out, looking to potentially snipe out that Goblin Big Boss, doing some nice bit of damage there as it does make contact. Slowly going to be whittling that down. I think Winds of Magic, though, might be better saved for some nice burning heads going right through these nice tightly packed units, and especially against the Savage Orcs, getting that fire damage or the magic damage to bypass their own physical resist. Vindictive Glare, though, is going to be arcing its way out, going to be running right into that Shaman Sorcerer, doing some nice bit of damage on that front. Skirmishers still just going to be kind of peppering away at that front line, able to do some decent work against these Forest Goblin Spider Riders, but for the most part, these Skirmishers not taking a whole lot of damage on either side. So that's probably kind of a win for the Greenskins there, considering there's a lot more funds allocated on the Norskan side for their own Skirmishers, but now they're going to be firing in to the very lightly armored Savage Orc Biggins who only have that physical resist to really resist any of that incoming fire. Goblins trying to kind of put some distance between them and the Savage Orcs, trying to push these guys back, at least just kind of keep them away from the more expensive units. It's another Vindictive Glare going to be going in, doing a nice bit of damage to that Shaman Sorcerer of Fire. I think that Shaman Sorcerer definitely needs to get on the move, potentially use these forests here to kind of just get some kind of cover from that Vindictive Glare, which has already taken out half of its HP with just a couple volleys on that, so a couple more, and that is going to be pretty much all she wrote for the spell casting of the Norskan side. Needs to at least get something covered in. Norska so far can be just very patient when just using the skirmish force as they can, but the Greenskins as well are being fairly patient themselves, willing to kind of take a lot of that incoming fire. But I mean, these Savage Orc Biggins have taken a ton of damage from just the skirmish alone. Burning Head trying to catch these guys out, but is going to be able to get dodged by the Greenskins here as they are able to pull through, but it is going to continue to keep going right on down the line, and it isn't going to hit nothing as it goes through these goblins, doing a nice bit of damage to them. One of the Goblin Wolf Rider Archers and the Forest Goblins Spider Riders has been able to get a little caught out by the Norskan Ice Wolves and the Norskan Warhounds, able to push these guys back, but they really didn't take too much damage, so they'll be back and ready to go before too long. Rest of the skirmish soldiers continuing to kind of pull things apart there, but they're wasting quite a bit of ammunition on just the goblins, not getting a whole lot of value there. But the Savage Orcs on the other hand have taken a ton of damage, and these guys are very expensive units to be losing so early on without even being able to get into melee. But it looks like the Marauders are starting to push forward, trying to get into combat with these goblins, as another Vindictive Glare goes off against that Shaman Sorcerer, who has taken quite a bit just from the Goblin Great Shaman alone, as the front line is getting underway, as the Marauders shouldn't have any problems dealing with those goblins. Another Burning Head trying to go through the Savage Orc Biggins. I think definitely needs to be a little bit more reserved on using that. Should wait until they're kind of already engaged in melee, but it is going to be doing a nice bit of damage to the 8-peak loonies, able to hit a nice portion of them as they are on the run. Goblin Great Shaman, though, getting a little push far forward, does have Hunter Champions popped on it. Both of the Feral Manticores, it does dive in on top of it. We do get that Itchy Nuisance, a nice response there, minus 24 melee attack, minus 30 base weapon damage, but it did take quite a bit of damage in the meantime, as we do get a boat going to be going right on down the line, going to be hitting the 8-peak loonies, hitting these goblins, doing a bunch of damage there. Should be able to rout 2 of them off, and it might even have gotten those night goblins down below the point where they needed them to prevent any of those fanatics from coming off. And the Goblin Great Shaman is going to be getting chased off by the Feral Manticores and Wolfric, taking a bunch of damage early on. So this whole flank for the Greenskins has really collapsed to the most part, and there isn't really a whole lot of support going to be coming the way for that Goblin Great Shaman. I don't see that thing coming back anytime soon. Savage Orc Biggins coming down the hill, trying to move in to support their lord, but he has already shattered, and now they're going to be turning their attention to that Goblin Big Boss. Shouldn't have any problem dealing with that. A few hits, and it is already on death's door. One more, and I think it is going to be well on its way out the match here. And it looks like the Greenskins, they do end up using their Wa, but it is probably a little too late. There is just not a whole lot left, and there is just tons and tons of Norskins. They've been able to single out the important units. Goblin Great Shaman's gone, the Goblin Big Boss is gone, and a lot of the skirmishers are also either on the run or very low indeed. Even the Morgrim's Mage Marauders has already used up all of his ammunition. The Orca Boar Boys coming in, trying to get a rear charge into these Marauder Horsemen, but these 2 Feral Manticores shouldn't have any problem in kind of repelling that attack. Balance power is now heavily in the Norskins' favor, and that is going to be all she wrote, as Norska takes the win over the Greenskins. So showing that Norska still has a bit of fight left in it, even though they're kind of a shadow of their former self. So take a look at the after battle report. Those skirmishers on the Greenskin side, the Morgrim's Mage Marauders 722, rest of them not doing all too great, as is the rest of the mobility. And then the Savage Orcs really performing rather under par. They got taken apart by that skirmishers. I think the Greenskins definitely need to be a bit more aggressive there. They were outnumbered on the skirmishers, so they really couldn't tank that because they didn't have enough units that could do that on the field. And then the 8-peak loonies unfortunately got hit by a few too many spells. Rest of the units, the Goblin Great Shaman did have some decent picks, though, against the Shaman Sorcerer of Fire, but unfortunately it was not enough to really help in that fight. Wolfric did fairly well at 1300. Both of the Manticores as well did pretty good, and then all of the Skirmishers did very well indeed, able to really kind of nuke down those Savage Orcs fairly well, and then rest of the infantry, not really going to be expecting too much from them. But that is it for that game, so we'll switch back over, and then we can, looks like we are just having people hop on in to this lobby from this point on, as we have our next contestants already in, even though we were going to go from lobby to lobby, but this works as well. Well, at least we'll do this until the lobby decides that it's had enough of people coming and going, and then we'll probably switch back to joining individual lobbies. So with that win, that does put RTK up another 2 points, so that is 9. And just so people are aware, all the 2v2s are worth 2, or 1v1s are worth 2 points, 2v2s 3, and 3v3 is worth 4. A little different than how it's been in the past. Normally it's been 1, 2, and 3. Now it's 2, 3, and 4. So we have Beastmen versus the Dark Elves in this next one, and the map for that, since now I'm in control of that apparently, is going to be Gorgazan. So Gorgazan going to be a fairly wide open map in general. So we have we have Bobman and Lord Baltimore facing off. So Bobman on the Beastmen, Lord Baltimore on the Dark Elves. So it looks like Lord Baltimore is ready. Oops. Alright, looks like both sides are ready to go, so we can get right on into our next 1v1 as we do get things underway for our, what is this, our 5th game of the day. So as we get loaded in, we'll see how both sides have prepared for this. Switch the scene on over. And for the Beastmen, led by Bobman, we are going to be seeing a couple Feral Manticores up in the sky with a Harpy as well. Going to be looking to kind of contend that Morathi double Manticore, which is so common on the Dark Elves. For the Lords and Heroes, we have a Gorbel as well as a Brace Shaman of Wild. Brace Shaman of Wild coming in with just Traderkin. And we have a couple abilities on the Gorbel, as we have Blood Greed and Slaughterer's Call on him. For the Lord, we do have, looks like Kazrak, the One Eye, going to be coming in on his chariot, rolling in with the rest of that mobility. So he has Scourge, 25% armor-piercing weapon damage, splash attack, nice, very nice bonus to infantry and base weapon damage. We have Apocalyptic Vision, giving leadership and melee attack, and the Dark Mail, which will give him a nice bit of damage resistance when he himself is in melee, so that'll help out quite a bit when he is rolling with the rest of his Tuskor chariots. We have some Angor Raiders. Frontline is going to be Angor Spearmen and some Angor Herds going to be in the front there. Mobility is going to be compiled of those Senegors, those chariots there, and then just some more of the Senegors. Not seeing any of the throwing axes, so very limited in range. Going to be very much a straightforward hit them hard and hit them fast. As for the Dark Elves, we are going to be seeing double Scourge Runner chariots on the ground. We have the Chill of Sontar, the War Hydra ROR with its nice, lovely Frost Breath. Otherwise, it is going to be a bunch of Dread Spears looking to kind of counteract the Centigore play on that end. And then in the back, a couple of Bleak Swords and some Black Art Corsairs as well. Going to be getting in some nice missile fire there. That nice 360 short range though, but able to kind of fire from all directions. And of course it is that Morathi double Manticore in the sky. So we have Wand of Kraton, Soul Stealer, Heartrender in the Dark Sword, Enchanting Beauty, and that Greater Arcane Conduit on her. Otherwise, that is going to be pretty much it. So the only real ranged is going to be on the Dark Elves. We have one unit of Angor Raiders, but that's not going to be anything too special there. Just a little bit of something to provide some poke into the sky. But these Scourge Runner Chariots are going to be able to have some pretty good freedom, at least initially, to get some shots in. The Centaurs are really going to want to try and get into those guys. But of course, these Scourge Runners can always just kind of fall back into the rest of their formation. And the Centaurs are going to have kind of a hard time dealing with these Dread Spears, at least on their own. A little bit of support won't be too hard for that. Of course, the Chill of Sontar is going to be kind of waiting for it, going to be taking a bit of shots, but is going to be kind of deterring a little bit of a response. But both of the Frail Manticores are going to be getting the thought of diving on in, but they do need to be rather mindful because Morathi Double Manticore on their own side are going to be having the advantage if they can single out those two Feral Manticores up in the sky, and they are going to be in hot pursuit. So this air squad battle is going to be underway, as I think the Harpies now might want to just kind of disengage and pull off these Feral Manticores. I don't think that the trio on the Beastmen are going to be able to beat the trio of the Dark Elves, and especially if Morathi wants to end up using one of her own Soul Sealers. But in the meantime, they are off running wild, as now the center ranks can get underway without the threat of Morathi and her own Soul Stealer. But we do have that K-Knight Assassin with the Web of Shadows, able to pop that and get some nice AoE damage there. But the rest of the Beastmen now are going to be getting a nice collapse on both sides. Centaurs get a beautiful rear charge into both of these units of Dread Spears, and the Bleak Swords might be able to just break them off of that rear charge as they just kind of slowly collapse. And we might be seeing, and we do see that Trader can overcast, and that is going to hit a bunch of units. So the Scourge Runner Chariots, the Blacker Corsairs, Bleak Swords, Dread Spears, the other Scourge Runners are all taking a very massive amount of damage there. And now things are starting to pepper in, and now the Chill of Sontar has no support left, as all of its Dread Spears and support has now finally vanished. And Morathi, kind of realizing that she got a little too far away from the rest of the fight, is finally going to be coming in to provide some aid, and is going to be dropping a nice juicy Soul Sealer. But it is only going to be hitting these Angor Spear, and it does actually seem to hit some of these Angor herds as well. Enough of its units was scattered about in that range to kind of hit those, so a decent amount there. But definitely would have liked to have seen that a little earlier on, as Morathi kind of dives down trying to save that Chill of Sontar, as the Gorbel doing some nice bit of damage to it. Just some ready and good lucks on the chat. But Feral Manticore on the Dark Elf side is going to be rampaging. The other one is already routing. So this little air squad here for the Dark Elves has been quickly broken down. I don't see actually either of those Manticores able to really kind of get out, which is now going to leave just Morathi as the only air unit left. And now both of the Manticores on the Beastmen are going to have no problem in just kind of chasing her down, and will have no qualms at all about that. So they will have no problem dealing with her at this point. I think the rest of the Dark Elf army has pretty much collapsed as well. I think the big problem with that for the Dark Elves is they just allowed their very powerful air squad to just get way too far out of position, not necessarily to take a lot of damage, but it just kept them away from the fight. And now Feral Manticore going to be targeting Morathi, going in for the final kill, as the Chill of Sontar is kind of a little confused on what it wants to be doing. Morathi does take to the sky ever so briefly, but that is only going to play to the advantage of the Feral Manticore, who's now going to be able to just freely chase Morathi, and Morathi isn't going to be able to really easily dive down and get any support from her ground units. Chill of Sontar ends up routing off as well, and now that K-Knight Assassin, trying to deal with at least one of the Manticores himself, is getting rather low in terms of leadership on his end. It looks like we have either a Soul Stealer probably going down, going to be hitting at least a few units of the Angor Spearmen, but probably not going to be enough. We won't be able to top her off in terms of HP. But now both the Manticores are going to be, I think, trying to just kill off the Assassin completely. And I think Morathi is kind of playing a chasing game at this point. I don't see any way for the Dark Elves to really come back. They don't have any of the Scourge Runners kind of off onto the field. The last Manticore is being chased off by those Harpies. They did, Beastmen have lost one of their Manticores, but the Hero Squad, and that is going to be army losses, as the Beastmen make a quick win out of the Dark Elves as they quickly deal with the ground units before Morathi even had a chance to return. So we'll kind of take a look at the after battle report. Both the Scourge Runners definitely did not do all too well, especially the Chilla Santar only getting 230. Nothing really generating too much value on the Dark Elf side, except the K9 Assassin did nicely with 1200. Morathi getting almost 1000. As for the Beastmen side of things, Kazrak and Bray Shaman, Gorbel, really a lot of that damage was dealt very quickly by the Cendicors, so I'm expecting to see kind of most of the damage kind of on their front, though the Angor Raiders, despite being the only ranged unit that the Beastmen ended up bringing, was able to generate almost 1000 value and only 3 kills, so a lot of that coming in from that Chilla Santar, able to get some nice damage in there. One of the Cendicors getting over 1000 on them. Harpies doing all right in both of the Feral Manticores, one getting 1100, so well played on that side. So let's switch the scene back over. We'll update the scorecard as well, as RTK is off to a commanding lead so far, sweeping this series, as the Beastmen are going to be taking the next game. That is another 2 points for RTK. I'm gonna have to probably reposition that now, with, if it will let me. There we go. All right, so our next one is gonna be another 2v2. So I'm gonna see if they have that lobby open. All right. I believe that should be the right one, though I don't have a spectator slot. So this is going to be Satsuma and Happy Puppy against Lord Baltimore and Blood Penguin. So let's send a message to get another spec slot open. So with this one is going to be Vampire Coast and Tomb Kings versus Dwarves and Brittonians. I definitely think this is going to be a Dwarf Brittonians favored, considering, especially for the Dwarves, they are favored against both the Coast and the Tomb Kings. And then, of course, even Brittonians is going to be very strong against Tomb Kings and have a fairly decent matchup even against the Vampire Coast. So I definitely think this is going to be a very tough fight for them as soon as I can join the lobby, that is. There we go. All right, so now we are in the lobby at least, so that is a good start. Looks like at least AIMA is ready to go, and I'm fairly certain RTK had good armies set as well, so we should be able to get right on in to this next one fairly quickly. And then we get into our second 2v2 of the day. Still have a fair amount of games left to play. As you can see, the list of games up on screen before we get into this one. Southern Chaos Waste, though, going to be a very wide open, very flat map. Tomb Kings and Coast both have some decent ranged, but of course you are against the Dawi, that is what they are known for. So let's see if the Dwarven Engineering is going to be up to the task of the Constructs and the Undead Gunnery power of the Coast. All right, we are just waiting on Satsuma to ready on up, and then we are going to be good to go for this 2v2. Can't wait to see what both sides have cooked up for us today. We are now loading on in. We'll switch the scene over as soon as we are in. Hopefully things run a little bit smoother than the last 2v2. That one was a little bit more of a slow motion replay, but we'll see how things fare on this side of things. Alright, and switch on back in. So we now wait for both sides to load on up. Considering we have two undead factions, probably going to be rather high in the total unit count with peasants as well. I'd be surprised to see another one over a few thousand in total. So yeah, it's going to be almost 4,000 total units. I think we actually we are going to be hitting 4,000 on the field. So for the RTK side of things, with the Tomb Kings and the Vampire Coast, for the Tomb Kings, we do have a bunch of skeleton spearmen in that front line, 5 units of those, and then a bunch, actually we have some Tomb Guard mixed in with some skeleton warriors for the rest of the infantry, but otherwise it is a lot of infantry. Just infantry is all that the Tomb Kings are pretty much going to be bringing. We do have the Chosen of the Gods, the Ushapti Great Bows ROR, very good at dealing with infantry with their shots. I mean, Shield Breaker, Armor Piercing, and a nice little spread shot. We have Arkin the Black coming in with Spirit Leech, Libra Mortis, Staff Nagash, and the Tomb Blade of Arkin. Pretty much his standard kit there. In the sky, we are going to be having a nice little crew of gun bats, all of which are going to be the handgun variant. We do have some carronades as well, which are going to be protected by some zombie pirate deckhand mobs with pole arms. And then in the center ranks, we do have Count Noctilus going to be on foot, as he's just going to be a very tanky lord. Armor piercing, bonus versus large. He has Captain Roth's Moondial. He has, looks like we have Wraithstorm, Arcane Conduit, Invocation of Nehek, as well as the Drowned Dead for some nice summons. We do have 2 gunnery whites as well, also going to be on foot with Scatwrath and more powder. Going to be trying to pepper in. It looks like there's a few more abilities as well on these guys. So we have Dead Eyes, and the other one had one more ability, which is Bomb Throw as well. Don't often see that, but a little bit of extra damage coming their way. Otherwise, I think that's pretty much it for RTK side. Let's swing. Actually, no, that is everything. So on the AIMA side, a very, very wide formation, many layers for this one, as we're going to be having the Defender of the Fleur-de-Lis, Knights Errant, and Knights of the Realm, as we have the Knights of the Lionhearted as well, who do have some magic damage. So against Coast in general, always nice to be bringing that, though it's not going to be needed, so they don't have to be too mindful with them. And the Defender of the Fleur-de-Lis moved over to that side, I think. Yeah, so they got a little replaced there. So the Knights of the Realm taking the other side. Thought they may have brought in a second one all of a sudden. But peasant mobs in that front line. Going to be backed up by some miners with blasting charges. And then behind that is going to be Dwarf Warriors, Men-at-Arms, going to be making up kind of the secondary and third line. And then we have some more ranged units, as we have Quarrelers and Thunderers going to be making up that back line. Triple carronades as well. Going to be outnumbering the one carronade of the Vampire Coast for sure. A couple of Slayers in the back protecting that back line, and those cavalry units that we did see before. As for the Lord, we do have Thoric Ironbrow going to be up on his anvil, as Thoric himself does have the Locus of Power, Rune of Doom, as well as Rune of Speed and Rune of Slowness for some nice bit of control on that front. As for the Brittonians, it is of course going to be Faye and her backup dancers, as we have Faye, double Paladin. So the Faye Enchantress coming in with the as we just click off there. So Chalice of Potions, Favor of the Fae, Arcane Conduit, as well as Shield of Thorns and Earthblood to kind of be healing up some of theirs. And of course, she wouldn't be remiss without the Miss of the Lady, both Paladins, one of which does have that Guardian ability. But that is going to be it for the armies. So let's see how things are going to fare. Both of the Guardian Whites are actually going to be pushing forward. I don't know if they want to be pushing too far, though. They will be able to, they take all three of those carronades firing in at them, not doing a whole lot of damage, as it is able to knock down the Guardian Whites, preventing most of that incoming fire. But that would have been a nasty bit of damage if all of those shots did end up hitting, as carronades are going to be landing to each side of these Guardian Whites, as they're just going to be pushing forward a little bit, get some shots off that they can, while the rest of the dwarves and the Brittonians are going to be kind of slowly pushing up. But it is going to be just allowing some shots, as they're focusing on Thoric here, just trying to do whatever they can to get some damage in, kind of trying to just force out some of the healing from the other ones. But we do see the enchanted ballistics going down, so some nice bit of accuracy and that reload skill hitting both of these units. So they're just going to be trying to, but Thoric has been able to kind of push forward just below the crest of the hill. So those Guardian Whites are going to be not really able to fire in, and that this time, that Gunnery White taken so much damage from those carronades. Those shots did not miss like the volley before, and that Gunnery White is already down below half health. So trying to push forward, but it is going to be forcing a Invocation Heck onto him. So definitely not worth that little attempt to push forward, as we do have Arkan on the far flank taking a bit of incoming damage now from the carronades, as they do try and focus him down, but he's able to miss all of those incoming fires, with maybe just taking a little bit of damage on that front. But he definitely is not going to be able to tank those cannons any better than those Gunnery Whites. Since he is on horseback, he is not going to have the benefit of being knocked down, and will take the full brunt of any broadside that the Dawi want to turn their way. Just a slow and steady push. The carronades are going to be singing, and the carronades on, or the cannons, I guess, on the dwarves, the carronades on the Vampire Coast already taken quite a bit of damage, losing 2 models already. And I don't even know if they have fired a single shot as of yet, though we do get a Spirit Leech going down onto the cannons of the Dawi, able to take 1 down, and overcasted from Arkan, as he does pop that Staff of Nagash, getting that ability recharge, which is going to allow a second one to drop instantly, able to take out another cannon right off the bat, and might be able, and does take down all 3 cannons very quickly on that unit. So very nice use of that Spirit Leech early on, but there is still going to be other carronades to deal with, or cannons on the Dawi side, so they'll have to be able to try and do it, but it has minimized the incoming fire quite a bit on that front, as Noctilus is going to be looking to be getting some summons down in that backline right on top of the Sunderers, as they're going to be able to at least try and tie them down and hold them. But we do get a Scabscrath going right through the line of the Sunderers, able to do some decent damage despite the fact that they have some fairly decent armor. And we are going to be seeing, I think that is going to be the Wraithstorm, going to be going right down on top of these guys, really focusing down the Sunderers as quickly as they can, trying to just deal with that very direct gunpowder unit. It's the only one that the Dawi do have, and they're able to at least push them back and do a nice bit of damage in the process, as now Noctilus is going to be waiting forward against these men-at-arms, as Thoric is pushing in against those Skeleton Warriors. But now we do have those Tomb Guard moving in, but the Ekron's Miners are going to be poised to get a very beautiful volley off into these units on that side, and those Tomb Guard taking a bit of damage, but the Skeleton Spearmen already down to half health, as I do hear that rune being popped off onto some unit in the vicinity. I'm not sure exactly which one that did end up hitting, as the Rune of Doom hitting off both of the Paladins, now diving in with the Fae to kind of help with this flank. But those Ekron's Miners doing an excellent job so far, but the Peasant Mobs unable to really hold things back. They did have Shield of Thorns on them, trying to give them that physical resist to hold them for as long as they can. But the Ekron's Miners already able to do quite a bit of damage. Quarrelers now facing the sky, as they are going to be trying to push back these deck droppers with handguns, as we get a Chalice of Potions dropping right into the middle of these Tomb Guard. But the front line, at least for the Brittonians, is breaking. All of the peasants and some of the men-at-arms already kind of on the retreat, but that battle is still long from gun. Balance power is slightly in the favor of AIMA, as we get that Liber Mortis going down, given that 40% physical physical resist on these units, just trying to allow these Tomb Guard to kind of just push into these Ekron's miners and tank some of that incoming fire a little bit better. Thunderers as well moving up, trying to get line of sight onto these deck droppers to get some shots in there. Both of the gunnery wights, I'm not even sure if these gunnery wights are able to fire in from where they are at. I think they might be able to kind of fire down at least at something. They are getting some shots into the middle, but that hill is going to be keeping them from firing in at the Paladins, Thoric, and the Fae, who is now kind of all engaging with Noctilus here, as Noctilus is trying to chase Thoric, as Thoric does kind of pull back. You still have the Fae and the Paladins here, as Noctilus is going to be trying to pull back. Looks like we are going to be getting another Wraithstorm dropping down onto Thoric this time around, able to do some decent, but that does do magic damage, so he's going to be able to tank that a bit better. Another Scattershot going down through the units, hitting the Dwarf Warriors and these Knights of the Realm, as all of these deck droppers just kind of sitting overhead at this point. Not a whole lot of fire coming up to meet them as they're pushing things back. The center pocket is kind of starting to falter in places. Summons going down on multiple fronts here, as we have these zombie summons and the gunnery mob summon able to get some shots in, just trying to push into these cannons as the shots are focusing, trying to get as many of those removed from the game as possible. But a very nice volley into these retreating Tomb Guard, as the last volley from the Ekron's miners hits home and doing a ton of damage in the meantime. The Fae, though, has taken quite a bit of damage so far, either from these deck droppers or from the gunnery wights. May have been able to get a nice line of sight, and is going to be probably forcing a bit of healing going down onto her. She just continues to take shot after shot, slowly sinking down further and further, almost ends up routing. Another Libra Mortis going off, and another rune being popped as well for Thoric as he pops that Rune of Doom, everything giving that 24 melee attack and that fear, so that is going to be helping their leadership just a little bit, as it nullifies the fear coming in from all of the undead forces. And we are getting that Ushapti summon in the back line here. It is going to drop and get some nice attacks into the rear of that front line, as the Fae Enchantress getting very low. All of these gunnery bats just focusing her down, able to bring her to kneel, as the balance of power is going to be shifting more into the favor of RTK, as the Fae is going to be getting pushed off. And if they are able to bring her down completely, that is going to be very good for them, having one less problem to deal with. And even Thoric himself, with Count Noctilus in pursuit, is being brought low, as he is taking hit after hit from this anti-large duelist. And this, Count Noctilus himself is going to be very tanky in the process. It looks like he's going to be kind of pulling back, looking for other prey in the waters, as another Wraithstorm dropping this time onto the Knights of the Realm. So that is the third one for him, and that is going to be the last we're going to be seeing, at least of that ability. Thunderers trying to push back again these deck droppers, but they've been doing a very excellent job of kind of making sure things do stay off the field. Cannons still firing, though. Almost used up all of their ammunition this fight. And in the center ranks, Thor continues to get lower and lower. Both of these gunnery wights have been completely unopposed, and now have a very good advantage position of just being able to kind of fire in their shots, and are going to be trying to deal with Thor, because when Thor goes down, that is a big leadership, and that Rune of Doom as well, because now Rune of Speed getting popped off, so giving another buff to that melee attack, plus 24 to this unit, as they're trying to bring down Noctilus, and Noctilus is getting fairly low. Both of the Paladins going to be coming in to try and good him with Thoric as well, and this might be the end of Count Noctilus, and maybe a little bit of hope coming back in for AIMA, as they are able to bring one down, but not before Thoric Ironbrow does end up routing himself. So this is going to be a rather interesting finish. Both of the Paladins are getting fairly low, but all of these gun bats just focusing down the Dawi Lord, and down he shall fall. There is still going to be plenty of ammunition going to be coming up from both of these gunnery wights, so these bats are not done yet, as there is not a whole lot left to really contest them. I mean, all of these Quarrelers, the Thunderers, the Carronades aren't going to be doing a whole lot, but they're almost out of ammunition themselves, and all of those bats already, there's one getting more powder there, putting it back up to about half health. Arkin, though, is getting rather low, as he's starting to take some shots in from the cannons and from the Quarrelers, as the last of their ammunition is being spent. And it looks like we do have, I mean, we still have another crew here with a full stack of ammunition on the carronades. So as soon as these guys use up their ammunition, this crew, if it doesn't get kind of pushed off, is going to be able to kind of jump on some of the other artillery pieces. So there is plenty of ammunition, at least in the carronades, or for the cannons for the Dawi. It's just going to be a long kind of slog, as these deck droppers with handguns is really the strongest unit left here for the undead factions. Chosen of the Gods are up into melee right now, having used up all of their own ammunition as they're kind of dealing with these paladins. It looks like the carronade may have been cannons focusing up, trying to deal with these deck droppers, and down goes Arkin though. So the lords for both of the undead are now off the table. It is down to just the gunnery wight, so no more spellcasting for these guys, as they're, well, no more spellcasting for either side, considering the Fae is also gone. It is just the paladins against the two gunnery wights, who have now taken command of their forces with the loss of all of the lords on the table. But these bats, they have, at this point, nothing to oppose them. There is nothing that can fire up into that sky. So I think it is, at this point, it is pretty much a matter of time. I mean, really, these two paladins need to deal with the source of all of the ammunition, and that's going to be these two gunnery wights. As long as these two gunnery wights are here, those deck droppers are just going to rack up insane values, and the coast forces are doing exactly what they need to do, and that's they're starting to regroup around these two gunnery wights, getting their all of their pole arms to pretty much just make that possibility of these paladins getting into them pretty much a non-issue at that point. Cannons almost use up the last ammunition, and these cannon crews definitely don't want to be actually, it looks like they are going for the cannons on this, so exactly what I was mentioning before. So they do pick up on those artillery pieces and are going to be able to start firing away with all of their ammunition. But one by one, all of these deck droppers are just going to be kind of dropping back to the rest of the gunnery wights, picking up some ammunition and kind of coming back to just continue firing away. Paladins, everything is just taking all of these units. Paladins are just trying to dodge the fire at this point, while the rest of their units are engaged. Like cannons have used up their ammunition, and these three are now set to fire. Last few shots going in on the cannon crew, trying to at least maybe reduce their effectiveness at least a little bit. Gunnery wights are getting a little low in terms of ammunition themselves, but I've seen at least a couple more powders from both of them, so I imagine they're getting rather low on that. I believe they come in with 4 abilities of that, and handgunners now going to be trying to focus down the cannon crew, as the shots just rain in, are able to actually eliminate one of the cannons just outright, and that is going to be it for that cannon crew. So no more ranged for the AIMA forces. They are now going to have to attempt to break through all of these undead polearms, and there is quite a bit of anti-large units. I mean, they are still just zombies, but they are going to be able to do some decent amount of damage even with just this many of them. So I don't think those paladins are going to have an easy time getting in. Slayers, trying to deal with what they can, are able to do some get some decent amount of kills, but there is only 3 of them remaining. They don't have any good targets left anyways at this point. And paladins are just kind of trying to find that hole in the formation. That formation is being closed up tighter and tighter to keep that from happening, because these gunnery wights are just going to be content with just firing away with whatever they have left. And there is that little explosive shot coming in against those Ekron miners. First time seeing that, I believe, as paladins now might be trying to thread that needle, but the zombies are going to be able to rotate around to close that little gap in the formation, and the front line is just going to be withering away. Spearmen, all these units have just been fighting for so long, but the paladins do manage to finally find a way into the formation, but they are now going to be surrounded by zombies on all sides. And we'll see if they're going to be able to kill things out, and they get separated even from these gunnery wights. So the units that they kind of dived in to try and deal with are now on the other side of the zombie wall, as they're trying to push through their own units, trying to kind of get a little bit of clear room, as more of these Dragonback Slayers, though these Dragonback Slayers on the other hand might be able to do some decent damage to these pole arms trying to get through them, but I mean, they're going to be taking a decent amount in return as we pop that other enchanted ballistics as they just try and bring down paladins. Paladins, though, diving in, not really getting a whole lot in terms of hits off. One does end up routing, and I think with that, bounce power is going to be shifting too far the other way. I think it's only a matter of time before army losses do take hold of the AIMA forces, as the other paladin taking some shots, going to be routing, and that is going to be army losses, I believe, as it does finally push the rest of the way. Only the Slayers are going to be fighting it out at this point. They are going to have quite a few units to try and deal with, but it is not going to be enough, as RTK takes the next fight as well, in a very nice faction, very difficult factions to be going up against, that they are able to pull through for that. And while I'm on this screen as well, we will update the score. So that's 3 points for a 2v2, and we'll kind of scale that in to fit a little bit better as well. There. That looks a little bit better on that front. So for the after battle report, the dwarves, Thork able to rack up almost 2k in total value, doing quite well on that front. Ekron's miners getting 1132, very nice volleys from those against the Tomb Guard, able to really do a number onto them. Quarrelers able to get some good damage themselves, 1500 cannons on that front, 2400 damage on that unit. The other one, 2300. So man, those cannons did a ton of damage this game. Unfortunately, one of the cannons did get taken out very, very quickly for them. As for the Brittonians, Faye able to generate over 10,000 damage, but only about 900 in total of value. Rest of the units there, nothing too great on that front. Brittonians, I think, were definitely kind of missing some of their peasant bowmen. Definitely would have been nice to have a bit more anti-air material, because these bats, I mean, imagine 1,800 on them, 975, 936, and 2,028 on the last one. Doing a bunch of damage with those guys, and they definitely, I think, carried that game very strongly, especially with these gunnery whites, 1,400, 1,900, and even Count Noctilus doing quite well. As for the Tomb Kings, the Chosen of the Gods did quite well, and then all of the infantry just swamping the Brettonian lines, but nothing too great on that in terms of total value. One did get over 1,000, but let's head back to that main screen and we'll update the table, and then we'll get into our next game, which is Dark Elves versus Empire, and that one is going to be against got drowned out in all of the messages. All right, so yeah, this one will be Call HR versus Blood Penguin. So we'll find that lobby, and we'll switch in. Hopefully they have that set up. That's not a good sign when you go into the multiplayer lobby screen and there's no lobbies being shown. Let's see, what do we have? There's HR and Blood Penguin. So, yeah, in terms for the scoring, the 14-0 sounds pretty rough. I mean, so far it has been RTK sweeping up until this point, but it is 2 points for 1v1s, 3 for 2v2s, and 4 for a 3v3. Definitely for future clan games, I should just put up that scoring on the table, since it has kind of changed. So if people are used to one way, it's been updated since then. We are in our lobby. Next one, Northern Chaos Waste by the looks of it. So while we wait for this game to kick off, I'm just going to take a quick little check up on the pups that's been a little too quiet in the other room. So we're going to have to just take a peek, make sure they haven't gotten into anything that they weren't supposed to. All right. All's quiet on the Western Front with the pups. All right, it sounds like both sides are ready for our next fight with Call HR and Blood Penguin. So Dark Elves and Empire. Traditionally been a pretty even matchup, so should be some good fun there. Fairly comparable armies overall. Both sides have some decent DPS on skirmish. They have decent light cav, good heavy cav. Overall lighter on the infantry side and some pretty decent lord options. So should be fairly good, even though the Dark Elves are more focused on armor piercing than the Empire is. So just waiting on them to hit ready up. So I think, so Blood Penguin I think might still be finalizing his army, but otherwise HR is ready. And otherwise, I hope everyone has been enjoying the game so far. I know the score may be a little lopsided, but games up till this point have been fairly exciting. So definitely haven't been without the action of the clan war. We are going to be approaching the eve of Warhammer 3, so that's going to be kind of interesting to see how this is going to, how multiplayer in general is going to be playing out with that. I know we kind of touched on this like earlier on in the stream, but with the domination mode, I know it's still quite early to really say one way or the other on how that's going to, how big of a role that's going to be, if that's going to be the final, I guess, way that multiplayer is going to be moving forward. But it's definitely at the very least, it's good to be seeing at least a interest in, or a dedication to a multiplayer in general. It's definitely something we haven't seen like at all from CA up until this point. So at least something like that is going to be good feelings about that going forward at the very least. And there's always room for change if things don't necessarily work out as maybe the community may generally prefer. But let's switch the scene over as we are into our next game. Both sides finally loaded on in. So for the Dark Elves, I think I got to change one thing quick. Alright, so they're going to be a rather large army from the Dark Elf side of things, as we have Malik Swords and Dread Spears kind of taking up the front length, one of which is going to be the Helibroni, as they do have that poison on their tips of their spears. Looks like we have a couple Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, some Scourge Runner chariots as well, and then for the cavalry of a couple Cold One Knights and a couple Dark Riders, or one Dark Rider at least, for that front, and a couple more Dread Spears in the back. For the Lord, it is going to be Malekith, going to be on a Cold One himself as he's coming in with the Gaze of Malice, and Soul Stealer for his kit. So definitely not seeing Morathi Double Manticore this fight. Kind of odd not seeing them on the field. And one more Scourge Runner on that far flank. Now for the Empire side of things, we're going to be seeing some Empire Knights going to be in the back line, going to be trying to counteract the mobility of the Dark Elves, so they are going to be outclassed by those Cold One Knights. We do have a couple of Pistoliers for some skirmish on that front. And then frontline is going to be Flagellants and Swordsmen with the Sigmar Sons mixed in for some nice unbreakable frontline material. Spearmen on the flanks, some Huntsmen, and the Silver Bullets in the center ranks for some nice anti-large and some nice damage from those Silver Bullets. A Grey Wizard going to be the spell casting for Empire, as they have the Pendulum as well as Melkoth's Misfying Miasma, looking to kind of slow down the opposing forces to allow either the Empire Knights or the Pistoliers to kind of catch up with like the Dark Riders with Creator Crossbows or those Scourge Runners. And that is pretty much going to be it. I do miss out on the Lord, and that is going to be Marcus Wolfhart with Hunter's Snare, as well as he does have the Amber Bow as well. So that is going to be the armies. Both sides going to be moving forward. Pistolier is going to be putting some pressure onto those Scourge Runners, just trying to kind of get into range as the shot does rain in from the Amber Bow of Marcus Wolfhart, doing some nice bit of damage there, but they are going to be dipping down, and now these Dark Riders with Repeater Crossbows are going to be kind of pulling forward to respond, to kind of push these Pistoliers back from those Scourge Runner chariots, because if the Dark Elves did allow this to continue, those Pistoliers would be able to kind of outshoot those Scourge Runners just by sheer volume of fire. And no Adelmo. The arrival of the fake chaos does not mean that Norska shall be abandoned. They will always remain number one in my heart. But the rest of the some nice shots coming in from the Huntsmen, doing some decent damage to those Dark Riders with their anti-large fire. Pistoliers, though, did take a decent amount of damage from the Reaper Crossbows themselves, so I think that is going to be a kind of a fair trade for those Dark Elves being able to eliminate some of the skirmishers and mobility from the Empire forces, as they are going to be kind of coming forward. And Scourge Runners are just going to be kind of slowly keeping their distance from these Huntsmen. Definitely don't want to be getting too close, or they want to be kind of keeping a mobile presence. Just going to be cycling in through these Flagellants, but they are going to be taking a volley or two from these Huntsmen. We're going to see how they are able to kind of tank that incoming damage. They are getting a little caught up on these trees as well, but they did do quite a bit to these Flagellants, but they just continue to take volley after volley as the shots kind of coming in from the Silver Bullets. I think the Silver Bullets are probably more of a threat than those Huntsmen, as they do take a bit of damage, but they are able to allow all of their models to survive, at least for now. But they did take a decent amount of damage in the meanwhile. More Huntsman shots, going to be trying to push back the Scourge Runners on the other flank, as the Scourge Runners are just going to be trying to get whatever shots they can in. And now that the front line is going to be in range of the Dark Elf line, as the Dark Elves, though, going to be kind of slowly pulling their way back. They definitely don't want to be taking a engagement headlong on this kind of this slant, so it is going to be kind of wanting to at least try and get it on more of a level ground. It's going to take a look at the profile a little bit farther back, and though not going to be suffering from that downhill charge penalty too much. I think the Empire, though, they need to be kind of probably being a little bit more aggressive. They're playing it very cautiously at this point. I know they can't really afford to engage too directly with the Empire Knights, and the Pistoliers, though, have taken quite a bit of damage up until this point, and they've been trying to kind of deal with these Scourge Runner chariots what they can. It looks like we might be getting down a net onto this flank, and this is probably going to be allowing these Scourge Runners to really get taken down very strongly, as the Dark Elves now going to be taking this opportunity to push up the hill, and are going to be getting the charge into the the Empire forces, Swordsmen definitely would have benefited quite a bit from getting that charge off onto them, but they have been able to deal with at least one of the Scourge Runners with a very nice Hunter Snare in the meantime. But now the Empire Knights are going to have to kind of go to work trying to whittle down the front line, having lost that initial charge. These Dread Spears trying to find a little hole in the formation, going to be trying to push forward. Cold One Knights as well, finding a hole in that formation, going to be charging in to these Huntsman. Empire Knights are there to respond, but we do have the Halberdiers here for the Empire, going to be pushing up into those Cold One Knights, looking to try and push them back. At Empire, it does have that advantage, especially with the loss of the one of the Scourge Runners and a nice Soul Stealer hitting both of the Empire Knights and those Pistoliers. Would have been nice to have also hit the other unit of Empire Knights, but still doing some decent damage on that front. Dark Riders have been pushed off, and a nice charge in from the Cold One Knights, but the Empire Knights just in time to kind of pull on out as they kind of pull these the Cold One Knights in. We do get a Melkos onto them. We're going to be reducing their speed, doing a little bit of damage onto them as well. That's going to allow those Pistoliers to get some nice damage in. Murderous Prowess does go off though for the Dark Elves, giving a nice boost to their melee abilities, as they are going to be kind of trying to push in. But more and more of these Cold One Knights have taken quite a bit of damage so far, and especially with the loss of the Scourge Runner Chariots, things are looking pretty strong for the Empire. They're getting some very nice crossfires in here. Silver Bullets have done an excellent job of kind of staying right in the middle and getting some very decent volleys off. Cold One Knights here are now completely shattered, as the Huntsman giving them a final farewell, as Marcus Wolfhard going to be getting some shots into the flanks of these Dread Spears, as we're going to be getting a pendulum going right on through all of these units, doing a nice bit of damage to those Helibroni, and trying to kind of open up a little bit of breathing room there for the Empire, as the Silver Bullets now are going to be focusing their attention more to Malekith and the Cold One Knights, as the last of really the heavy hitters for the Dark Elf Cavalry is going to be charging headlong into these Huntsmen. Pistoliers, Silver Bullets, all of which are going to be targeting this one unit of Cold One Knights. So at the loss of one Huntsman, removing the last of the presence here is going to be a very nice ability. As another Soul Stealer goes down, it does clip the Grey Wizard and the Swordsman, but it is going to hitting mostly single entities after all. And now the Cold One Knights have been pushed back, and Empire looking very strong here in the late game. Not a whole lot left in the immediate support for the Dark Elves. The Scourge Runner Chariots have taken quite a, or have used up all of their ammunition, so now they're pretty much delegated to just being the chariot roll. Empire Knights getting a nice charge into these Dread Spears engaged with the Spearmen. And at this point is pretty much Malekith against the world, and there is just a ton of units left. As we get a Gaze of Malice going to be going off, trying to do some nice damage to those Huntsmen. Does a nice little bit, but it isn't going to be enough to kind of break them. And Malekith is now going to be standing pretty much isolated, as those Silver Bullets are going to be opening fire, a beautiful volley right into his flank, as Marcus Wolfhard as well getting some nice shots in, bringing him down bit by bit. And I think that is going to be just about all she wrote, as the Empire going to be standing tall against the Dark Elves, as that is going to be army losses, and that is going to put AIMA onto the board, as the Dark Elves do fall to the Empire. So for the Empire, Marcus Wolfhard getting some a nice bit of damage, 1547, and then the rest of the units, these Sigmar Sons, able to at least pay for themselves. Halberdiers, only one of them getting a nice bit of damage, 841. The other one's kind of just being held in reserve even in the late game. But the Huntsmen and the Silver Bullets all did very, very well, getting some very nice damage there, and even the Pistoliers doing okay on that front. As for the Dark Elves, unfortunately, the mobility game was rather lacking in this game. All their Cold Knights got focused down by the ranged of the Empire very, very well. And unfortunately, without their mobility, the Dark Elf army really didn't have a whole lot left for them to deal, or for them to really kind of dish out the damage that they needed to. And Malekith was kind of just left without anything that he could do. So that is going to be it for that game. Let's switch back to the main screen, and we'll update the score as well. And we'll be getting into our last of the 1v1s. right, so the next one is going to be another Norska versus Greenskin matchup. This time it is going to be the reverse of the last one. So this time Greenskins is going to be on RTK side. Greenskins versus Norska. We got a lobby up for that already. So we'll hop on in. Alright, so we get Big JP on the Greenskin side. It's going to be kind of odd not seeing Vicious Satsuma on the Greenskins. But he will be against Butcherbird on Norska's side, so one of the remaining Norska players. Very competent with them, so definitely expecting them to be in good hands for this. So is GS Butcherbird or Big JP? That is the question. Okay, so Butcherbird also has a lobby up. So we got 2 lobbies in. So at this point, I guess Butcher, since I'm already in Big JP's, if you can see that lobby, you can just hop in to that one. So I can't invite you, being a spectator here. Right, well, Butcherbird cannot see this lobby. Since I'm not hosting, I think JP will have to add Butcherbird in. So I'll just send him a message. Right, so should get everyone into the lobby in just a second. And then we've got a few more games left on the docket. So this is the last 1v1, and then we have a 2v2 and the finale, the 3v3. Fingers are, of course, crossed that that is going to run relatively smoothly. It would be a surprise if it ran at full speed. It just depends on how slow it's going to be with 6 players and a spectator. So that'll be good fun. Not what I meant, JP. Because I think that's all set. Okay, so it looks like the friend codes have been exchanged, and we'll have both players in the lobby in just a hot second. Alright, so yeah, JP, you're just going to have to, I guess, invite him instead, since he still can't see the lobby. Lobbies have been a treat today, despite everything that we're supposed to do to be able to see him. Still cannot do that. So, what a problem to have going into Warhammer 3. All right, so it looks like he has finally arrived. Looks like Big JP is pretty much all set in terms of his army, so just waiting on Butcherbird for his. Alright, so I mean, we've seen this matchup once before today, with Norska being controlled by RTK versus the other way around. And that one, the skirmishers kind of won the day for Norska there with a nice good pick with some feral manticores. See how the matchup's going to fare this time around. See what Norska's got in its very limited bag of tricks today. They have a fair supply of monsters. Not necessarily all of them are all too great. But we'll see how things do manage to work themselves out. Hope everyone else is enjoying the weekend. Been a busy week, but it's been good fun. Alright, looks like... Oh, that's just JP saying he's set and ready to go. Butcherbird should be ready shortly. And we'll be getting into our last 1v1. 3 more games left today. I know RTK has already technically clinched the series, but we will still continue off until the very end, because there is the 2v2s and 3v3s, of course, to look forward to. So we will definitely be looking to take a look into those. We are now loading into our game, so we'll switch the scene over in just a sec once we're in. Then see a rematch of Norska versus Greenskins, just flipped around this time around. Right. Yeah, no 4v4, Bobman. I don't think you can even have that many people. Well, I think it's technically possible to have a 4v4, but you can't spectate it. And if you even wanted to attempt that, good luck. Hopefully you guys are both, all 8 of you are in the same room, because I can't imagine that the lag would even be bearable at that point. Alright, finally got everyone loaded in. So going over the Greenskins first. So for the Greenskins, we do have Goblin Wolf Rider Archers and some Forest Goblin Spider Riders in the front with Morgrim's mangy marauders as well. Otherwise, going to be that kind of just common standard skirmish for the greenskins. We do have 3 orc boar chariots though, and 3 black orcs as well. So we're going in with some heavy metal, as we have 4 goblins just to kind of help generate that wall, and a goblin great shaman for the lords. The goblin great shaman does have arcane conduit, crown of command, don't even try it. We have itchy nuisance and a vindictive glare. So as for the Norskan side of things, though, we are going to be seeing Marauder Horsemen, and I imagine some Horse Masters, but it is going to be just 4 Horsemen for that front. We have a front line of Marauders, so we're going to have 3 units of those, and then we're going to be having 3 units of Marauder Berserkers, unless there's a 4th one right there, and then they are going to be backed up by some armored skin wolves. So we have 3 of those, one of which is going to be the Maws of Savagery, so they do have that armor piercing over the regular variant. So a very fearsome foes on that front. For the lords and heroes, we do have Wulfric the Wanderer going to be charging forward, as he has a lot of his abilities and items, as he has Seafang, Fight or Die, Hunter of Champions, as well as the Sword of Torgold, which gives a nice buff to his base weapon damage, but doesn't really affect his armor piercing on that front. And then we have a Shaman Sorcerer of Metal coming in with, it looks like, Plague of Rust, as well as Searing Doom. So Plague Rust definitely going to be very helpful here with those black orcs on the field, and then Searing Doom going to help kind of again nuke down those units just a little bit more so. So for the armies, we are going to be getting underway, as the greenskins going to be kind of pushing forward, and unlike the last game, they are not going to be so outnumbered on the skirmish front. So it is just going to be horsemen, so it isn't even horse masters. So the goblin wolf rider archers and like the forest guy spider riders should have a little bit of a better time in dealing with them. However, they do have to deal with the regenerating skin wolves, so all of these armored ones. Not a whole lot's going to be able to really kind of punch through them on the goblin wolf rider archers. I mean, even with the armor, it's only 70 armor, but they do have that physical resist as well. So that's going to be a little bit more helpful. Vindictive Glare going to be going off, and unlike the last fight, Norska is going to be only having a Footcaster. So Footcasters definitely a lot more resilient to that Vindictive Glare, since they do get knocked down on this flank. On the other hand, though, these Marauder Berserkers definitely do not want to be taking all of this skirmish fire, because they are completely unshielded. They just take that damage. Only 15 armor. They need to be a lot more protected, and both these horsemen are going to be kind of pushing forward. In the meantime, all of these skirmish force for the greenskins is going to be able to really do a ton of damage to these guys, and they're going to have to really kind of just try and mitigate that, but they're taking a lot of damage very early on. Another Vindictive Glare going against that Shaman Sorcerer Metal, but really not doing a whole lot of damage there. I think definitely the spell casting could have been best used elsewhere. I mean, even against like the Horsemen, I think you might be generating a bit more value, because having that Shaman Sorcerer on foot, as I said before, just is going to make them a lot more tanky to those missile spells. And man, those Berserkers though on both flanks are just taking a ton of damage from that skirmish, and they're just racking up the value from those skirmishers, and the Marauder Horsemen just don't have the DPS to really do a whole lot against it, as the Skin Wolves are going to be charging on forward, looking to get some more damage, as that Vindictive Glare again going to be searching for that Shaman Sorcerer Metal, doing some damage, but again still able to resist a good amount of that. The Goblin Great Shaman does get Hunter of Champions popped on top of it, but it has been able to kind of push through, so that is going to be a little bit wasted on that Goblin Sorcerer, as the Black Orcs and all of these units are able to kind of pull in and kind of stop them from doing a whole lot. Itchy Nuisance, base weapon damage, and melee attack even as such going to be reduced, so the charge in from these Marauder Berserkers aren't going to be doing a whole lot to these Black Orcs. Black Orcs do have that Plague of Rust Overcast, so that is minus 60 armor. So now that Itchy Nuisance has been kind of pulled off, but unfortunately the Shaman Sorcerer Metal does take an Overcast from that Overcast is Searing Doom, and only on some goblins, so that is a very unfortunate use of that spell, I believe, and that is just going to allow point blank fire range from the goblin shaman right into the Shaman Sorcerer. So that's a little bit of a dodge this moment, and that Sorcerer is going to be getting pushed back. So things are not looking so great for Norska this time around, as the greenskins are able to kind of tank that initial charge very well and being able to deal. But we do hear a boat, and that is going to be a really good one at that, going to be hitting both of these Black Orcs in the full extent of their line, doing a nice bit of damage there, and they have been, the Orc War Chariots have been taking quite a bit of damage from these Maws of Savagery. So the Maws of Savagery and Wolfric is really going to have to carry their weight here in the late game, as the Wah does go off as well, giving the buff to this front line. Black Orcs trading quite well into the Marauder Berserkers, and the Marauders able to hold back that front line, and without that Plague of Rust, these Black Orcs are going to have a very hard time in being dealt with by Norska. I mean, Maws of Savagery are probably going to be the best bet, but the armor piercing from the Black Orcs is going to be able to allow them to do quite a bit of damage in return, and all of the skirmishers really kind of just pushing back, but they don't have a whole lot of room left to run to, as that white line is right up against their backs, as Norska has pushed them against the edge, but they have been able to really hold back that line, as the Black Orcs are doing a very excellent job of holding. Marauders, Marauder Berserkers, everything and the like is just washing up against those Black Orcs unit, but the Maws of Savagery and all of the rest of the Armored Skinwolves are in hot pursuit of that Goblin Great Shaman, as they are pushing forward, able to deal with these Orc War Chariots, and that is kind of the last of the big threat, or the last kind of stopping point against that Goblin Great Shaman. Is now they're going to be able to kind of just push forward in to engage the Goblin Great Shaman, as there's not a whole lot left that really wants to kind of contest these Armored Skinwolves, as the Orc War Chariots do kind of try and charge in. The Black Orcs definitely probably the best, but we do get a Plague of Rust going off, so the Shaman has returned, at least for the briefest of moments, able to get that spell off, but is so very low. So was able to at least get to that, but I don't think there was a whole lot of follow-up to that Plague of Rust, unfortunately. Nothing was really engaged with that unit to really respond, as it did kind of pull out right as that spell did go off. But so far, balance power is still fairly even, though Norska's infantry is at this point pretty much non-existent. There's some stuff on the edges of the map, but for the most part, I mean, the Shaman Sorcerer has completely shattered, has used a decent amount of the Winds of Magic, but still I don't think it was quite enough, as we get, I believe, an Itchy Nuisance, and don't even try it going off on Wolfric as well, so he is getting quite low indeed, being surrounded by Black Orcs. He does get another one of his boats off, as he goes right through those Black Orcs, does hit a bit of his own units, but he does take a Vindictive Glare right to the face. He does pop Bite or Die, trying to stay in that fight, but at this point, even that balance power is fairly even. There's only these units left for Norska really in any fighting condition. Wolfric does end up routing, and these Skinwolves don't have the best leadership themselves, and all of the units of all these Black Orcs, two of them are fairly low, but one is relatively healthy and shouldn't have any problem dealing with them, and they do push them back. And Norska looking like they are going to be faltering, as the balance power shifts pretty massively into the Greenskins' favor. There is just a massive horde of Greenskins bearing down on these Skinwolves, and that is going to be army losses. Greenskins do take the last 1v1, so that will up their score even a little bit higher. So let's take a look at that after battle report, and then update the score as well, so that will put them at 16, with another 2 points from the 1v1. So for Norska on the after battle report, unfortunately, Wolfric did not do all too great, and the Shaman Sorcerer, a bit of Overcast and a bit of Vindictive Glares later, quickly found its way off the fight without really even getting caught out in terms of melee. Just some unfortunate casts on that front. All of the Marauder Berserkers also just didn't really have enough to deal with that super high armor of triple Black Orcs, and that was really kind of the breaking point for the Norskins. They just couldn't break through, though the Maws of Savagery did do rather well, 1168 and 1000 on the Armored Skinwolves. As for the Greenskins, the Goblin Great Shaman did relatively nice, 1600 on that, and then the Black Orcs 1300, 1100, and 900, so a lot of good damage from them, and they still had quite a bit left in them at the end of that fight. And then Morgar's Mage Marauders did pretty well on top of that. So let's switch back to the main screen, and then we can switch into the 2v2 as we update the last game 9 record. And we shall look for the 2v2. So should be this one. need to crack open another one here in just a bit. Looks like we have RTK in the lobby on the Dwarves and High Elves, and it's going to be Counts and Tomb Kings on AIMA side, though they have not quite yet joined the lobby, so we'll be waiting on them. And then in the meantime, though, I suppose we should get a little bit of a refill. Oh, let's see. So for on the AIMA side, let's see who we have going to be joining us today. So it's AIMA. So yeah, it'll be Butcherbird and Pajadron on the Counts and Tomb Kings for AIMA, up against Bobman and Rusty on the Dwarfs and High Elves for RTK in the last 2v2 of the day before our finale, the 3v3 coming up right after this one. It looks like this one is going to be on Schwarzhofen before the final one on Peak Pass. Just waiting on one more. So I'll see if he can see the lobby. If I can spell his name right. Well, Butcherbird was joking about taking it 2v1 with him getting 20k funds. Unfortunately, oh, we got King of the Dead here, actually. Well, that is a sight for sore eyes. Oh. I have not seen King of the Dead for a very long time. Good to see him back, though. Don't know if he's supposed to be playing, but I'm game for it. So, well, we'll just kind of wait for them all to kind of just finish through Army Select. This would kind of be probably an uphill battle for the undead. High Elves definitely have quite a few very annoying tools to deal with both of the factions. Just kind of how the High Elves are always a thorn in the Count's side. There's also a very strong matchup against the Tomb Kings. And of course, the Dawi, both. It's not as overbearing against those two, but definitely would favor Dwarves, High Elves in this matchup off the get-go. Of course, if we have a Inform King of the Dead, it might change a thing or two about that. So it looks like that's going to be the case. We'll be seeing King of the Dead on his Tomb Kings, his favored faction. I hope everyone's been enjoying the games so far. Definitely know the scorecard hasn't necessarily led to the most nail biter in terms of series as a whole, but I know the games have been pretty good. Good action up until this point. We've got the best yet to come with the 3v3, pending, of course, connectivity issues. Hopefully everything does fare pretty well on that front. Well, unfortunately, I can't see if everyone's armies is close to completion just yet. But at least I know RTK had a pretty good grasp on kind of what they were looking to be doing going into this matchup. We had a few practice runs this morning. Definitely showed that I'm a bit more out of practice, probably. Looks like Rusty is ready to go, and I think just waiting on AIMA before we can get underway on our second to last game of the day. I know their armies might be a little bit more ad-libbed. I don't think King of the Dead was supposed to be making a grand appearance today, but actually no. Well, on the updated list it does have King of the Dead on it, on the live Excel file, so I was working off of outdated information by the looks of it. Butcherbird's ready. Just waiting on, there we go. All four are ready, and that means we are good to go for our last ones. We'll load in, switch on over, and let the good times roll. Right, for a 2v2, this is probably a rather smaller size map. In terms of that, it's fairly well suited for 1v1s, but getting 2v2 it can get a little crowded on this map. It definitely does provide two opposing hills to really kind of stand off against, and a couple obstructions here and there. Looks like we will have RTK off on this hill on the left, while AIMA will be sitting over on the hill on the right. And hopefully the load time isn't too ridiculous coming into this final 2v2. Already sitting at about a minute of load time before everyone is in on both sides. See if we can hear any of the units on the ground. Can hear the Dawi screaming their war cry on one side. I don't know how much the undead will make in terms of overall noise. Just a bunch of crickets, it seems. Looks like we've loaded in, though, so we'll go over both sides of the armies. So for the High Elves, we are going to be seeing triple Phoenix Guard for their army, one of which is going to be the ROR, the Keepers of the Flame, as they're going to be sitting in that regal blue. As we try and track down where they keep moving their units to. We do have also triple Illyrian and Reavers on that side, with some White Lions of Trace and a couple of Rangers, with Alariel the Radiant being the Lord for the High Elves, as she is going to be coming in with Foz Protection. We have the Shield Stone of Isha, Earthblood, Tempest, as well as Arcane Conduit and the Star of Averlorn. And we'll go back to that Keepers of the Flame. So they do have that magic damage as well, which is quite nice against any of the ethereal units that like the Counts could end up bringing. For the Dawi, it is going to be 4 cannons spread out across that back line, and they will be bringing the bulk of the infantry, as we have a bunch of dwarf warriors with some dwarf warriors with great weapons to kind of deal with a grave guard, tomb guard, and the stuff like that, and the grumbling guard as well, the long beards with great weapons ROR. And these guys do have that the old grumblers, which is plus 9% vigor, and of course they have immune to psychology as well. For the undead being led by AIMA, we are going to be seeing a bit of mobility kind of off in the back flanks. So we have some skeleton horsemen going to be vanguarded in the corners, hoping to try and catch out any of the artillery pieces with a nice bit of sneaky shenanigans. We have some carrion as well to kind of help counteract any of the range units, and a couple of fellbats to also assist in that regard. For the front line, it is going to be zombies spread out for that initial engagement. Good cheap chaff. What more could you ask for? And then it is going to be Graveguard, and Graveguard with great weapons for the Counts in terms of the heavy hitters on the infantry. And then it is going to be Skeleton Spearmen for the infantry on the Tomb Kings. And then for the, I guess, more of the army makeup of that Tomb King army, we do have the double Tomb Scorpion. We also do have a bunch of Skeleton Chariots, with Cetra the Imperishable also going to be running tangent with them, as he's going to be on his own chariot with Neru's Incantation of Protection, Dijaf's Incantation of Cursed Blades, and he has the Restless Dead and the Curse for his abilities, and some Nehekran Horsemen on that front as well. We do have Isabella von Karstein going to be the Lord for the Counts, with the Blood Chalice of Authority, Master Beguilement, Raised Dead, Gaze of Nagash, and the Invocation of Nehek. And we do also have a Corpse Cart on a Holy Lodestone to give a little bit of extra passive regen to the units on that front line. And we did miss the Lord on the Dawi side, and that is going to be Thoric Ironbrow, as he does have the Rune of Slowness, Rune of Wrath and Ruin, Rune of Doom, as well as the Rune of Hearth and Home, and the Locus of Power on top of that. So the Rune of Hearth and Home, immune to psychology, nice against all of that undead. Rune of Doom to also mitigate a bit of that and give a nice buff to that melee attack. Rune of Wrath and Ruin, some nice damage. And then, what was that last one? The Rune of Slowness for a bit of additional control, but quite a bit of abilities on that. So it looks like AIMA is ready to go here. Both armies look pretty much ready on their deployment. Maybe a little bit of last-second movements here and there. And the last bit, I guess we can go over the Keepers of the Flame, which is like one of the RORs, not necessarily super as familiar with, but I also have that Mark of Assyrian, which means that they do kind of on the model death, they give a little bit of a explosion to do a little bit of additional damage on top of that. And of course they do have that martial mastery with the rest of the Phoenix Guard, but that is probably going to be the 3 units that is going to be the hardest for the undead to deal with. Both the Tomb Kings and the Vampire Counts both struggle a bit in dealing with those units, and especially when they have to get through all of these other units. That is going to be kind of the last bastion for the RTK forces. And oh, please, please continue. Do not. We got in 30 seconds into the game. Come on. You can do it. I see movements. King, sort out that connection. Well, he's not on the 3v3 list, so it should be a little bit better for that, but we are moving. No one dropped, so knock on wood for that. But we are no longer frozen. We are getting underway. Carrion are moving in, probably getting a little bit too aggressive on that front. They definitely don't need to be trying to dive in so early. I know there looks like they're going to be trying to jump on top of the cannons to shut them down, but I think that's probably a little too early on. Though, I suppose as I say that, those Tomb Scorpions have taken a lot of damage up until this point, so it's kind of more of a needed distraction. They need to shut down some of the cannons, because though that damage being dealt is kind of ridiculous. Those skeleton chariots and the Tomb Scorpion have both taken quite a bit of damage. Now these guys won't be able to kill the cannons. The cannon crews have already dropped their artillery pieces, and the Rangers will make short work of those carrion. But it will at least give the Counts and the Tomb Kings time to kind of progress up this hill to meet the High Elves and the Dawi front line, as the Cetra and his chariot squad are kind of running a little amok in that front line, causing some problems on that front. But both of the chariots are all kind of off the table. Those carrions have long since finally disintegrated, going to be allowing those cannons to come back online. But in come round 2 of the carrion crew, as the skeleton horsemen also trying to get off, but the Illyrian Reavers and the Phoenix Guard are going to be very quick to respond, as the Fellbats are going to be diving down as a Tempest does dive right on top of them too, and it would have done a bit of damage, but they were able to get in range of the cannons before that did 2 considerable amounts of damage. I almost wonder if it would have been more better spent against Isabella, forcing her onto the ground instead. But so far the mobility of the Tomb Kings have pretty much all been wasted, as they've been trying to just shut down the cannons, but that very well may be well worth it, as now that the undead have kind of bridged that gap to the High Elf and the Dawi front line, and are now going to be allowing their Tomb Scorpions in particular, as well as Cetra and the chariots, to start running amok amongst the rest of those lines. But these Phoenix Guard getting a nice little bit of a surround onto Cetra, as the Faz protection goes off, as that's plus 30 armored and 24 melee defense, which is going to allow them to tank all the damage all the better. And Rune of Doom gets popped as well, 24 melee attack, and that can also allow them to cause fear, which, I mean, is against the undead. It's not going to do much to the undead, but it will keep their leadership up a little bit more than it normally would. And we do get a Star of Avalorn going off, as the Tomb Scorpion is going to be getting pushed back, and right now is pretty much just going to be healing up the Crumbling Guard. Both Thoric and Alaria the Radiant are both pretty much at full health, so maybe a little bit early on the use of that ability. And Isabella von Carson kind of just feigning a few attacks here and there. I think we're going to be trying to get an invocation to heal up these Tomb Scorpions. Definitely in need of that, with considering how low it did end up getting. But it's going to be back into the fight as both the Tomb Scorpions are going to be pushing back into the center formation. And it looks like we are going to be getting a summon down onto the cannons to keep these guys offline for as long as possible. The Skeleton Horsemen also going to be harassing that back line, but these Phoenix Guard are going to be very content at kind of keeping those things away. It's going to be very hard to get into those cannons with those guys on patrol. Both of the Tomb Scorpions still able to shut down at least one of the cannons, as Alariel the Radiant and Lyrian Reavers and the like are all kind of collapsing in. So a lot of the single entities are all kind of in this group here. Balance power is slightly in RTK's favor, as like the Tomb Scorpion is taking quite a bit of damage, and Cetra himself with the Blood Chalice of Authority is on top of him. So that will be healing him up 2,500, as well as giving a nice little buff to that vigor. But Thoric is being able to dish out a nice, decent amount of damage, and of course there is the Dwarf Warrior with great weapons, so able to kind of chunk through his armor. And then all of these Phoenix Guard in particular are just all at very healthy positions. I think they're pretty much all at full health, so that is going to be a major problem in trying to deal with it. These Grave Guard with great weapons are going to have their work cut out for them for sure in trying to deal with those units in particular. And Cetra already at his healing cap, just from Isabella being able to get him those heals. So any damage now, he's not going to be able to sustain much more. He has to be very mindful on what he's doing, and he is probably one of the best tools to deal with those Phoenix Guard and just trying to hit them and just grind them down bit by bit, because even the Grave Guard with great weapons are slowly getting brought down, and those guys are also going to be the tools needed to deal with those Phoenix Guard in the late game. And the longer it takes to get to those Phoenix Guard, the harder it's going to be for the undead to deal with that, as Alaria the Radiant feeling fairly confident with the surrounding support, and Thoric Ironbrow also kind of coming in, trying to deal with at least one of the lords for the undead, as Isabella von Karstein going to just swing back, is kind of trying to deal with these cannons. But the Keepers of the Flame, Master Beguilement is off on top of them as they were engaged with those Grave Guard, but she's going to take to the skies and looking to engage in other aspects of this fight. And Cetra back over to him, does have his incantation of protection on top of him, which gives that 40% misresist, but also it does pop that incantation of Cursed Blades, which base weapon damage and armor piercing, really looking to try and dish out some damage. But Thoric and Alariel both able to tank most of that incoming very, very well, so he does get a nice charge here into the rear of the formation of these Dawi and High Elf forces. The cannons are singing once again, and Cetra is going to be suffering greatly from those shots. He's a rather large target. Isabella is going to be diving down, trying to deal with that, or at least shut them down, keep Cetra alive and well in the meantime. As now she is, though, going to be forced to disengage Phoenix Guard and Alaria Radiant. Going to have a thing or two to say about her involvement in that backline battle, as she's going to be once again back up into the sky and kind of circling about. But we kind of take at what's left for the undead and for the living armies. All of the Phoenix Guard, again, still very, very healthy. I see 2 units of them right there. The other unit's down to half health, but I mean, that's still 2 extremely healthy units of Phoenix Guard. And a lot of the Grave Guard with great weapons. I mean, I'm just kind of taking a look. There's one very low in terms of HP. I just don't think that the undead have anything left that can effectively kill them, because if they're forced to stay engaged with these guys for even a semi-decent amount of time, I just don't see Cetra or any of the heroes or the lords for the vampire accounts to really dish out the damage necessary to even deal with them. Like, no amount of summons is going to bring those guys down, and Cetra is slowly getting chipped away bit by bit. Every time he charges in, he's going to be losing health, no matter how slight it is. He is not going to be getting any of that back. He is at his healing cap, and so is not going to be able to benefit from that anymore. Isabella has been able to heal up a bit of her own, her healing cap, but I mean, for the most part, she is mostly a support lord. That Blood Chalice of Authority is so very good in these team games, especially against with lords that don't usually benefit from that healing. I mean, Tomb Scorpion is probably the only... Tomb Scorpion and Cetra are going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting to deal with the Keepers of the Flame and the rest of those Phoenix Guard, but enough uses of like the Master Beguilement with -6 or -40 melee attack. If you can time that just right on those Phoenix Guard, there is potentially a chance. We do have some more Grave Guard kind of coming in as they will be meeting the Rangers who are trying to kind of push back on Cetra, who continues to cycle in and out and has been able to do fairly well in terms of overall damage, as we have an Earthblood being cast though by Alariel the Radiant, healing up all of these very elite and expensive units. And at this point, even a Star of Avalon probably would be pretty well worth it against these Phoenix Guard, who are they still have 47 models left, but they can get quite a bit of healing left per model. Tomb Scorpion is going to be diving on into the center fight, as those they'll be meeting those Phoenix Guard, and hopefully the animations of that thing isn't going to allow it to get bogged down. And there is that Star of Avalorn right in the middle, and that is going to be hitting a lot of very expensive units. The Phoenix Guard, Alariel the Radiant herself, all of these units going to be getting quite a bit of extra HP. That Phoenix Guard I think may have been topped off for the most part in terms of what it had per model unit. And Cetra still alive, still trying to do whatever he can. I'm kind of surprised to see that he is still kicking here in the late game as he charges through those Dwarf Warriors, causing them to rout. And we are going to be seeing that late game Ushapti summon, hoping to kind of cut through the Keepers of the Flame. Now these guys, they don't have to worry too much about trying to survive against those Keepers of the Flame or the rest of the Phoenix Guard, but they will have that armor piercing necessary to deal with them as best they can. So as long as they can stay engaged, is probably the better they will be. Because if they lose those models, it's not going to be as much of a problem. And a nice charge in through Cetra, from Cetra, as he is able to get right through those Keepers, a little bit of Rune of Wrath and Ruin right on top of those Graveguard, doing a nice, decent amount of damage to them. And then now it is just going to be kind of this long drag, because there's no real range. I mean, there's some cannon crew mixed up in here, but there's not going to be able to really get on top of any of their units. They don't have that mobility advantage. I mean, Cetra would be able to easily pick them off if they did try and get free, and Isabella is going to be coming on back to the fight. But so far, Cetra's been playing it very, very well. He's charges in. He's been able to mitigate getting caught in for too long, though this may be just a little bit too far in as he's getting surrounded by a lot of these units. Thor kind of comes in, but he is once again able to kind of pull out, and he's going to use this opportunity, I think, to charge right through these Dwarf Warriors. Hopefully maybe try and take a few of them with him before he comes back in 4 seconds. And bit by bit, though, all of these very expensive and elite high elf units, these Keeper of the Flames and the Phoenix Guard, are getting dragged down. The Phoenix Guard, you can just kind of see their HP is fairly low on all 3 models at this point. It wasn't too long ago where all of them were sitting exceptionally high in terms of HP, and I just was very doubtful of any option to really kind of pull them in. Isabella taking that opportunity to deal with those cannon crews, finally shattering them once and for all. Tomb Scorpion is working rather well, kind of cycling through. Lariel has reached her healing cap. And I mean, Cetra is getting pretty damn low himself. I mean, he has 850 HP remaining as he dives into this blob. And we are going to be getting, looks like, a Master Rune of Slowness. So that is going to be minus 60% speed. And I think that's going to be the final farewell. He is now finally crumbling. And Cetra, despite putting in a valiant effort, is going to be falling to that crumbling as he slowly withers away, as he tries to get one last charge in, however slow that may be. But that is going to be the last that Cetra breathes, and then he is down. Tomb Scorpion, I think, will be shortly to follow, and pretty much the rest of that is going to be on Isabella von Karstein, as she is no melee combatant, and she will be slowly dragged in, taking a few hits from Thork and Lariel in the meantime. So, and with that, you can just see the balance of power shifting quicker and quicker away from the undead. They put up a valiant effort and did a lot better than I imagined they probably would against all of these Phoenix Guard, considering how long that these guys were at full health. So, well fought, though, in this 2v2, but Isabella will be succumbing. That is going to be army losses, at least for the Tomb Kings and for the Counts. And RTK is going to be taking this series, as only these last few units are going to be alive and well. It looks like it kind of froze up a little bit, so I don't know if we're going to be getting an after battle scene. But it does look like, I mean, with everything dead, it's kind of odd that now is going to be the time that things end up coming back. But is withdrawn, and there they finally disintegrate, and we can get into that after battle scene as RTK takes that 2v2, which is going to give them another 3 points. And we'll go over the after battle real quick, and then it is going to be the finale, the 3v3. So Cetra, 3657. So a ton of value on Cetra, though unfortunately the rest of his army was not able to do as well as their lord. So kind of taking a quick look at that. One of the skeleton chariots got almost 1,000. One Tomb Scorpion paid for itself. The other, unfortunately, did not do just that. Cannons, one of them did get 1,000, but otherwise nothing too great there. Gremlin Guard did rather well. Thoric himself, Thoric got 4,700 in total damage. That is insane. I mean, I know like a lot of the Tomb Kings and Counts units were able to get to their heal cap, but that is still a ton of damage value from them. For the Counts and High Elves on that end, Isabella not really expecting to do all too much. The Graveguard actually did some decent work. One got 1178, Graveguard of Great Weapons, 1300 and 1300, so they did pretty good work on that front. Just like this, the mix of the healing from Alariel and all of the Phoenix Guard was got 1500, 14, 2167, so a lot of value from those guys on top of all of that. But a very well fought battle, and both sides just racking up the damage value. Pretty interesting fight there indeed. Yeah, Cetra, I was definitely impressed that Cetra was able to survive nearly that long, and I forgot to switch the scene back over. So next one is going to be the 3v3. I don't know if they're going to be in the same, so okay, so we do have that one open, so I'll join that. And then we'll get into our final game of the day. Jesus. They messed up. I guess we'll switch over just for a second here. So we can see our... Oops. Never mind. Switch back. Don't look. They're supposed to spell out RTK, but they messed up the joining order, so it's now Table Round Knights. Unfortunate. All right. So while we wait for these armies to finish, I'm going to be right back. Dogs are asking for a little attention, so I will return in just a hot second. All right. I have returned, and the Table Round Knights, oh, they're trying to make it right. I think they're trying to leave and come back so they can get the order in the correct spot, but we do have Counts Skaven and Brittonians going to be on the docket for our last game on RTK side. And geez, they're chain. Oh, no matter. But for RTK, it is going to be Bob Tresh on the Counts. Vicious Satsuma will be on the Skaven, and Houseplant will have command of Brittonians against Blood Penguin on the Skaven. We'll have Noah Face on Chaos, and Lord Baltimore will be on the High Elves for AIMA's side of the matchup. Well, RTK tries to get their order in the lobby to spell out RTK. We'll wait on the rest of the contestants' armies to be created. So, I mean, 3v3s are always just kind of just an interesting show where sometimes you can have a plan, but most of the time that plan is not going to work. So we'll see how that works. Everyone is ready to go. We're loading on in, and hopefully everything is going to run as smoothly as we can. I mean, as smoothly as you can expect, I guess, for a 3v3. Right. Let's see what we have in store for us today for this 3v3. Everyone's still going to be loading in. This is on Peak Pass, one of the largest maps that you can end up playing on, so it's definitely going to give as much room for maneuvering as possible for both sides of this engagement. Though some of these factions are going to be a little quicker than others, and some not going to be necessarily too keen on taking full advantage of the full size of this map. The only thing we can hope for at this point is everyone loads in the next few minutes, but looks like everyone is now in, so let's see what we have in store. So for the I guess we'll start with Brittonians then. So we have a mounted, well, we'll figure out where they went off to. So Brittonians has a fair amount of mobility, as we have Knights of the Realm for all of it, and one unit of questing knights. We have some mounted yeoman archers as well, interestingly enough. Some peasant bowmen with pox arrows, and then some peasant mobs for some of the chaff, though most of the chaff looks like it's going to be held by the zombies. We have the Fae Enchantress going to be rolling in with the Chalice of Potions, Favor of the Fae, Arcane Conduit, the Dwellers below, which is very good against any stationary units, like so any gun units or particularly artillery pieces. It does very well against, and Earthblood as well. Both paladins, one of which is going to be bringing in that Guardian. And then kind of seeing what else I missed on the Brittonian side. I think that pretty much wraps that up for them. For the Vampire Counts, we are going to be having all of those zombies spread across that front line, taking the role of the chaff for the most part over the Brittonians and the Skaven, who have plenty of that themselves, but they're going to be having some skeleton spearmen mixed in with some skeleton warriors as well, so just lots and lots of cheap mobility, or cheap infantry. We do have some crypt horrors as well for some armor piercing, poison, and mass, and a Vargulf as well for a nice bit of armor piercing, fear, and terror to boot on top of that. And of course, Isabella von Karstein, the most common lord for the Counts in any team game, as she does have that Blood Chalice of Authority coming with Master Beguilement, Raise Dead, Gaze of Nagash, and Invocation of Nehek. That is it for the Counts. As for the Skaven, it is going to be Poison Wind Globadiers taken up behind all of the undead units, and then there is going to be some Skaven slaves still, so we're going to have plenty of chaff on that. We'll have to take a look at the total unit count here in just a second to see just how many units are on the field. We do see also some Jezzails. I think that is probably the Nanny Boopy sharpshooters up in front. And then I think that is it for the infantry. For the lords and heroes, it is a Gracier of Ruin, really looking to contend any of the air units, as we have the Unholy Clamor on the Being on the Bell, Dreaded 13th. We have Warp Lightning, we have Howling Warpgale, Warpstorm Squirrel, and Arcane Conduit, going to be flanked by a couple of chieftains as well, looking to kind of help with that armor piercing with the also the power grab. So if that Gracier ever does end up dying, that is going to be a +8 leadership map wide for that chieftain. Other one has the Shield of Distraction, which is -5 melee attack. That is it for the forces of RTK, and they did end up having a total of almost 4,000 units themselves. And we have 2,400 on the AIMA side. So they do have Skaven, so it is going to be Skaven slaves for that front line. Plenty units of those. Some clan rats mixed in, and some Poison Wind Globadiers. Only 2 units of those. We do have some warp grinders, going to be helping to kind of prevent anything from getting into the middle ground. And we also have a couple of assassins coming in with their concealment bombs and rival hide talisman on both of them. And then Lord Skrulk is going to be the Lord, coming in with the Rod of Corruption and the Luber Bubonicus. And then I think that is pretty much it for the Skaven. We do have some rangers with some Warp Block Jezzails and some Plague Claw Catapults. I think that is all she wrote for that. We do have 1 unit on the farthest of the flanks, and that is going to be just some Chaos Warhounds with poison. So continuing on with Chaos, we do have some Chaos Warriors with Halberds, some Chaos Marauders mixed in to that front line, though their presence is going to be a bit more minor, as we have some Chaos, as we have like the Demon Spew, the Forsaken. They do have that poison, some more Chaos Warriors with Halberds. And then we do have the Summoners of Rage, where a lot of these funds are going to be coming from. 2,000 in total on those guys, as they keep shifting around. We also have Archaon, the Everchosen, with the Slayer of Kings. We have Standard Eye, we have Burning Head. It looks like we have the, I don't think that's the Flaming Sword. It's Cascading Fire Cloak, giving some more armor piercing and melee defense, and Fireball as well. And then for the High Elf side is going to be mostly in that air squads. We have the Flamespire Phoenix, we have Alariel the Radiant, and a Frostheart Phoenix as well. And the other side definitely did bring tools to bring with Howling Warpgale and the Warpstorm Scroll, so we're going to be a little bit mindful of that. So Star of Everlorn, Arcane Conduit Tempest, though, on that front, and Earthblood, as well as the Shield Stone of Isha. For the rest of the High Elf units, most of which, though, is going to be in the air, we do have Silver and Guard and some Spearmen mixed into the ground units with some Bolt Throwers and some Illyrian Reavers. And that looks like it is just about it. Got through everything before both armies did decide to get underway. Usually don't have quite enough time for that. So I think we're good to go. Let them know, and then it is going to be a fight for that middle ground. Looking at both armies, definitely the AIMA forces brought a bit more on the ranged department with the Plague Claws, more Jezzails. We also do have some Poison Wind Mortars that I did miss from earlier on, though overall on RTK it's much more just an infantry fight and just kind of trying to get into melee. You do have some units that can fight, shoot into the air, those Nanny sharpshooters. Particularly, you needed something against any air units, and High Elves definitely would have had some of that. Even Chaos could be bringing some of those air units, but they did not bring any this day. So we shall see how this does go. I definitely think that maybe AIMA could have deployed maybe a little bit more spread out, giving a little bit more space, because when all things collide, it is going to be a mess upon messes to determine where things are going to be going. But we'll see how things do fare. I think both sides are ready to go. Everyone looks fully deployed, and it is down to the last fight. All right, looks like all of AIMA's ready, so everyone's readying on up. Good luck, have funds across the board. Let the battle commence. And we'll see how long. Looks like things are going pretty good in terms of overall stability. Maybe slightly slowed down, but both sides definitely have a bit of space before to move forward. Before they're able to get even remotely in range. If we take a look at the total range of these units, I mean, even the Plague Claws have quite a ways to go. Well, the Nanny with sharpshooters going to be opening up, trying to get a volley off on to Alariel and company, but they are able to dodge just in the nick of time. Able to dodge that first incoming volley, and AIMA sharpshooters are going to be pulling back. They do have that snipe, but they don't want to be getting spotted any earlier than they have to. It's just not something that these guys going to be wanting to stay visual for any longer. Because with like the Plague Claws, bolt throwers, and the like, keeping them nice and hidden. So Dire Wolves going to be just kind of returning to the rest of the group. Nothing that they can really see that can really kind of benefit in trying to get on top of. There's just so many, I mean, like Jezzails, Poison Wind, all these units here going to be really deterring them even trying to get into anything, as they're going to be getting a little hunted down, though, as the Flamespire Phoenix does try and make a little dive run on to those Direwolves, but the Direwolves do kind of pull back into the rest of the formation. Unfortunately, we cannot speed up the closing of the distances between the two armies. By the looks of things, it looks like RTK is going to try to start circling their way kind of around and take the upper hill on this far flank here. So they're going to be trying to kind of move up this ridge and then kind of taking that advantage of the high ground, and either trying to force the rest of the AIMA forces to kind of maneuver and just kind of face them on that side, and just having that upper hill is going to be an advantage in and of itself. You know, seeing if any of the AIMA forces are going to be responding in kind. It looks like mostly they're just going to be trying to form up as RTK kind of slowly cycles their way around, just a little slower than would normally be the case, but again, this is a 3v3. You can only expect so much when we have 6,000 total units on the field. Natty Boobos, though, are going to start opening up themselves. Going to be getting some nice, decent volleys into Lord Skrulk, but they have quite a long range to get into. I think if they can try and push into these Poison Wind Mortars, might be definitely beneficial getting on to them. But Lord Skrulk and these Assassins are going to be kind of pulling back out of range of these guys as the Flyers do dive down into the zombies. Not a whole lot in the immediate vicinity to really challenge that attack. I mean, it would be kind of a waste for the Gracier to even attempt, but we do get a Gaze of Nagash going off, so closing in, and all but one of the missile fires does connect with the Lariel. Might be trying to get a response in terms of either an Earthblood or potentially a Star, but a Star I think would be a little too early to even consider that, as the Natty Boobies again open up. Giselles on the AIMA forces are going to be getting some shots in, this time just on some zombies. Definitely not going to be wanting to be using too many volleys onto those guys. Definitely not worth their effort, as the Natty Boobie sharpshooters, though, they are going to be able to return that fire much easier, considering they have that snipe ability, and the Warplock Giselles on AIMA are going to be kind of pulling back. Plague Clock Catapult taking their own shots into the approaching infantry as the descent of the RTK horde comes down over the ridgeline. Going to be coming in to face off against all that AIMA has to throw against it. And a decent land in there is going to be able to kind of clip the Natty Boobie sharpshooters ever so slightly. I don't know if they're visible. It does look like the Natty Boobie sharpshooters are visible. They are no longer hidden, so something at least is going to be able to kind of keep those guys spotted for at least a short period of time. I mean, at this point, RTK would be probably very content at just absorbing all of this incoming fire from the Giselles with their zombies. I mean, that is a rather cost-effective use of them. I mean, they have plenty more chaff units to kind of throw into that meat grinder, and having the Giselles use up their ammunition on relatively low-costing units. I mean, these zombies are only going to be costing 100. Any volley from these from all of those Giselles not going to be generating a whole lot of value for them. I mean, even if all of the Giselles focused down one zombie, I don't think they'd get more than a couple total units dealt with if they used up all their ammunition, just with how tanky those zombies are. The air squad for the High Elves is being just kind of sitting off into the range, and are going to be diving down onto these Natty Boobie sharpshooters. We do have the Chieftain in response, and in response we are going to be getting that Howling Warpgale Overcast, and in comes the attack onto Alarielle. She does pop that Star of Everyone, forced to use that, though. The healing might not be quick enough, as those Bone Breakers, or the Chieftains on the Bone Breakers, are doing quite a bit of damage, and at least for the meantime she is able to at least stabilize, though she is in a very bad spot right now. The Crypt Horrors are coming in as well, trying to add their mass to the mix, trying to just kind of close that noose around Alarielle and get those Chieftains in. We do have a nice little wind spell going to be coming in. Burning Head will be roasting through a few of these units. Actually doing a whole bunch of the Poison Wind Globadiers, but Alarielle is able to at least escape up into the sky, but that cannot be necessarily said the same for the rest of the single entities. The Frostfire Phoenix and the Flamespire Phoenix, both still stuck on the ground, and I missed it all. I wish I had seen that. The Gaze of Nagash comes up from Isabella, sniping out Alarielle. We only saw the puff and the fall, but that was a very nice snipe out there from there. And the Flamespire Phoenix as well is just completely shattered. So trying to be a little bit too greedy. The High Elves have lost so many units. The Questing Knights pinning in that Frostfire Phoenix, the Frostheart Phoenix, and I think with, the the chieftain kind of getting around behind where that Frost Star is going to be going. Now I think that is, I mean, so many units were lost there in just that initial engagement as we kind of just swing over what the rest of the units are doing. These zombies are colliding with these Chaos Marauders, but the Poison Wing Globadiers doing an excellent work at just breaking as many of those units as possible. The Jezzail is trying to kind of counter fire against those Poison Wing Globadiers, but there's just so many Poison Wing Globadiers left. One has actually ended up running it. There is fairly low, and a lot of the range units on the RTK side have gotten to a very low point, but I mean the single entity death squad in the air has already been dealt with, and so that is a very, very good pick so early on for them, as the Vargulf is kind of running havoc amongst the inside with the assassins, both taking a decent amount of damage. The chieftain as well kind of coming in. We do have that rival high talisman, someone has 40 melee attack, so they'll be able to tank that a little bit better there. And these poison wind mortars, though, getting some nice volleys, but these Knights of the Realm getting a very nice charge in, though the Summoner's Rage might have a thing or two to say about that, as they themselves charge in and will make quick work of these Knights of the Realm. They are very much tooled to that task, and we're getting Lord Scroll as well, getting some summons in with us. Actually, this is going to be on the RTK side, as we get to that dreaded 13th, the Stormvermin with halberds right on top of those Poison Wing Globadiers. Some very nice damage from just the explosion alone, as the Poison Wing Mortars on AIMA's side is getting still harassed. Even the Summoners of Rage are not quite able to break these Knights of the Realm quickly enough, as they can remain to be shut down, and there's a lot of pressure kind of coming in as more of this high mass units, these Crypt Horrors, are kind of starting to funnel in. The Storm Vermin, even though they are summoned, they are going to be able to break one of the Poison Wing Globadiers, and are now going to be pushing pressure onto the Poison Wing Mortars, as well as the Plague Claw Catapults, who have been able to use up quite a bit of their ammunition. But this squad over here with the Grey Seer, the Chieftains, and all of the rest of the units are just gang piling on Archaon. And I don't think Archaon is even physically able to move out of this position, as he is just getting surrounded by the Fae, by the Paladins. All of those units are just ganged up around him, and things are looking very strong for RTK here at this point in the game. I mean, just so many very good picks at this point. Everything has kind of collapsed back into the back line of the AIMA formation. Poison Wing Mortars have been routed off, and the Plague Claw Catapults are for the most part just kind of at a done. Point Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers as well getting pushed back, and now even the Skeleton Spearmen are starting to get some collapse in on the back front, and a very nice Chalice of Potions on top of the Silverin Guard, as we just kind of see Archaon's final stand here amongst all of the units. The Chieftains, Paladins are going to be bringing down the Ever-Chosen. He is so very low. I mean, even him coming back at this point, since the High Elves are gone, they don't really have any healing left. All of the Peasant Moment kind of pushing in, trying to get some range in, and just so many of these units have been broken so very quickly. This is definitely not very par for the course, as how quickly this 3v3 kind of just evolved. It was just the RTK hammer just came flooding down the hill, and AIMA just wasn't able to really kind of hold them back. And while everything is kind of at a standstill, hopefully things will be able to kind of stabilize. But it looks like we did end up losing one of them. Unfortunately, I don't think it would make that much of a difference. I mean, it was almost at army losses anyways. It looks like we have the Spearmen already breaking from army losses. It is only a handful of units that are still remaining that have kind of kept up the fight. And there is that Gaze of Nagash doing an excellent work, and the Gaze of Nagash has done a lot of damage this game, and was able to land 2 beautiful hits along our L'Ariel early on in this fight. And yeah, at this point, it is pretty much done. All of AIMA conceding the victory here, as a rather convincing 3v3. As we're going to be taking a look at the after battle report here real quick before kind of finishing things off. The Skaven have just kind of decided that they don't really agree to that balance of power, and that there's army losses, though eventually they're forced to kind of accept that fate. For the longest time, it was well past army losses. but for some reason the Skaven just decided that they weren't going to give up just yet. So we'll go over the after battle report real quick. Unfortunately, Lariel, the Frostheart, and the Flamespire both got absolutely dumpstered so very early on, and that was like 95% of their funds. Chaos Archaon was able to rack up a ton of kills, got some nice decent damage value. Summoner's Rage did some okay as well. Unfortunately, they just kind of lost all of the support that they would initially have had. For the Skaven, Plague Claws used up a decent amount of ammunition. Gisele's got some decent damage. Unfortunately, the mortars did not on that front. As for the RTK side of things, for the Brittonians, Faye got 1255. Pallies both did quite well on top of that. Knights of the Realm over 1,000 on them. Even the Questing Knights did quite well. Skaven, both of the Chieftains did remarkably well, 1362 on that front. And then 1,642 on them, but otherwise, rest of the Poison Wind's not quite as ridiculous as that amount. 1590 on a Boo-Boos. As for the Undead on the Counts, 1766. So much of that was on those Gaze of Nagashes. Did so much damage to Alariel in that fight. Just such great luck on those volleys. Like the first volley, only one of them missed. And the second volley, I gotta imagine like almost every single volley had to have landed on that. Both of the Hounds actually had some very excellent play, 134 and 161 kills. Otherwise, that is going to be it for that. We'll switch back. We'll update the final score just to reflect that. Last one is worth a total of 4 points. Fortunately, that does make the score a whopping 23-2. As in the final 3v3, RTK does emerge victorious. But yeah, that is pretty much going to be it for the stream. Some nice fun fights. I know the final score doesn't really reflect that as much, but some good fun. I hope everyone did enjoy the series as much as I did. And yeah, unless there's anything else, we're just probably going to be closing things out. We're already at 3.5 hours, so not really. It's been already a fairly long stream on top of that. So if there isn't anything popping up in the next few seconds here, we're going to be closing things out. So, yep, GG's all around. Thank you all for joining. And as always, have a good one.